plaintiff did withhold the child from the defendant, and she was held in contempt of this court as a result of withholding Grayson from his father.
This is the time and place set for the evidentiary hearing on the plaintiff's motion for modification of custody, seeking to modify the custody order of June 11, 2019. Ms. Smith, we had time to speak to the attorneys briefly that we're ready to proceed. You wish to make an opening statement or simply proceed to proofs?
Simply proceed to proofs, Your Honor.
Okay. And Ms. McNiff, do you want to make an opening statement, reserve your opening statement, or waive your opening statement?
I'll waive as well, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Smith, you can call your first witness.
Okay, I'd like to call Miss Danielle DeLong.
Okay. Ms. DeLong, we're going to have some testimony from you, so we'll ask that you would raise your right hand and be sworn in, then we'll proceed.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Go ahead when you're ready, Ms. Smith.
Miss DeLong, can you state your full name and spell your last name for the record, please?
Danielle Charlene DeLong, DE, capital LONG,
And where do you live, Miss DeLong?
18 Vale Street, apartment 1, Battle Creek.
And who do you live with?
Myself and my 6-year-old son and Grayson part-time.
How long have you lived there?
May of 2020 during COVID, so three years.
And where did you live prior to the Vale Street address?
I stayed with a friend for a moment until this place was ready because of the COVID situation. And prior to that, I was in Coldwater.
What do you do for a living?
Clean homes at Home Pride Cleaning.
And how long have you worked there?
A year and a half.
What is your work schedule like?
Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. till 3:30, 3 for take.
Would you say that you have a flexible work schedule?
Yes. I need an appointment or court like today. They were around it and it's nice.
And you stated that you live with your 6-year-old son and with Grayson, the minor in question today, part-time. So
Yes.
children do you have?
Just the 2 boys.
And how many children do you share with the defendant?
1,
And when was Grayson born?
5/5/2011, May 5th, 2011.
What was the nature of your relationship with the defendant at the time that Grayson was born?
And I think this predates the entry of the last custody order by quite a bit. I'm not sure it's relevant.
Okay. Ms. Smith, how is that relevant to this motion to change?
Just laying a foundation, Your Honor.
Well, I think it goes beyond that. I'm going to sustain the objection. Please confine yourself to what's happened since the order of custody on June 11, 2019.
Will do, sir. Ms. DeLong, since the last custody hearing, what was the outcome of that hearing? Of the June 2019 custody hearing?
I lost sole custody to Ryan, and I'm not sure Ryan gained full custody.
And what was your parenting time schedule since that hearing?
Every other weekend, Wednesday night dinners, in the summertime, every other week, rotating every other holiday. Standard parenting time, I believe.
And have you always exercised your parenting time since that custody order?
For the most part, yes. There was a time where I had COVID, or maybe Grayson didn't feel well, or Grayson had something going on at his father's. Sometimes if there was an event, we would try to flip-flop and make the day up somehow. Sometimes I would just lose time. It just the situation, I guess.
Where were you living at the time that custody order was entered?
In Coldwater.
And how long after the custody order did you move to Battle Creek?
A few months. I was back at Battle Creek by the beginning of fall, to be closer with Grayson, to try to make it the visiting schedule, then driving back and forth. I stayed with my friend that winter, and then by springtime, I had my own place, and I've been here since.
And you've been at that same address since, thank you.
Yes.
What was Grayson attending the custody order?
Well, while I had him, he was in Coldwater at Jefferson Elementary, and then Ryan gained custody, and he switched to the elementary school near the house that Shelley and Ryan were living at. And that then followed into Harper Creek, but then Shelley and Ryan broke up, so that transferred Grayson to Lakeview Middle School for the last year and a half or so, and then he recently moved him to Little Rock. So it's been a couple different school switches.
And since the 2019 custody order, when you would have your parenting time with Grayson, where would you drop him off to after your parenting time was over?
At the beginning, it was Shelley's house, because that's who at that time they were together. So it was Shelley's home. And then it became McKenzie, the recent girlfriend. And Anik would be out on Lakeway Drive at his grandmother's address. So it just kind of depended on what's going on.
And when you say grandmother, whose grandmother are you referring to?
Ryan's grandmother, Grayson's great grandmother.
During the summer of 2023, so this past summer, where were you taking Grayson after exercising your parenting time?
Territorial McKenzie's house. And then it became Ryan's grandmother.
During those drop-offs, to your knowledge, was Mr. Cromwell present?
No.
To your knowledge, who was Grayson spending the majority of his time with?
Your Honor, objection, lack of foundation.
Okay. I'll sustain the objection. Please lay a foundation.
So when you would take Grayson back after exercising your parenting time, to your knowledge, who do you believe that it was you were leaving Grayson with?
Parents.
To your knowledge, was Mr. Cromwell also living with his grandparents or at the grandparents' house?
No.
Again, Your Honor, lack of foundation.
Ms. Smith, if you can lay a foundation, I'll allow it. Otherwise, I'll sustain the objection.
What kind of activities do you and Grayson partake in when you have him in your custody?
We go to movies, we build Legos. He recently began sports within the last year or so. We'd go to the basketball courts, we'd go outside and throw football. We'll play some Mario video games every now and again. Times we just go to the library and read. It just depends.
And during those parenting times, would Grayson ever come to you with any issues that he had in his life or things that he felt he needed to talk to you about?
There's been a couple things. He was uncomfortable and being teased about, like, it's silly, but like a unibrow or his eyebrow. So he, like, things like that. He's had issues where people would be bullying him and nothing was really being done. So I would just try to talk to him, explain people are going to say mean words, just to try to build his courage, encourage him to be positive and to only think positive about him. So no matter what someone says, you know what I mean? Just try to build him up as a child.
And do you have any idea of what the bullying was specifically about?
Your Honor, if there can be a foundation laid that doesn't involve any hearsay from the child.
Present sense impression, Your Honor, just Miss DeLong's impression of what she took from what the child was saying.
Well, I don't think that fits within the realm of present sense impression, because she's not experiencing it. She's hearing it back through the child. So I'm going to sustain the objection.
Ms. DeLong, to your knowledge, was the bullying situation ever resolved? Did you ever go to the school or?
I never did go to the school. Shelley went to the bus garage, I believe.
Your Honor, again, hearsay.
Ms. Smith?
We'll leave out the part about the bus garage.
Okay.
Ms. DeLong, to your knowledge, how was the bullying situation resolved?
I'm not sure.
Did you ever have Grayson come to you again about being bullied at school?
Yes, he actually asked if
Objection,
help.
Your Honor.
Ms. DeLong, do you recall a situation in January of 2023 where the defendant told you to come and pick the minor up because he was having an attitude problem?
Yes, I believe it was the end of January.
Ms. DeLong, do you have Exhibit 7
Um,
of plaintiff's exhibits?
I can't pull it up.
Do you have it in your email?
Yes, it's in my email. I'm trying to pull it up on the side. I apologize. No. You said the exhibits.
Exhibit 7. Are you able to see it now?
I'm working on it right now. I'm so sorry, everyone. You said number 7?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Do you recall having this conversation via Facebook Messenger with the defendant?
Yes.
Could you read that conversation, please?
Number 7, it came from Ryan. Come get your son before I knock his head off. He's grounded for life. But if he doesn't get out of here for a little while, I might beat him. Sick of this attitude he has. Not sure where it came from, but I'm done with it. I responded with what happened. Ryan states, well, he choked Logan for starters. I said, what the F? Ryan came back with, he's about to get an attitude adjustment, slamming doors, screaming at me, kicking, throwing, and breaking shit. I don't know who this little boy thinks he is, but he's about to get an ass whooping.
And Ms. DeLong, do you have Exhibit 8?
Yes. And then he says, I don't know, but he's about to get an ass whooping. I said, he don't play that with me. Ryan says, this is the first time he's been like this with me. I think he doesn't believe me when I tell him I'm going to whoop his ass. He acted like he was about to throw this fucking Xbox that would have been the end for him. I responded with, he got anger issues about something. Ryan says, well, he's about to figure out that I'm not the one. And I state that I'm on my way.
Ms. DeLong, after that conversation with the defendant, can you give the court your recollection of events that happened?
Right? What?
After that conversation on January 30th with the defendant,
Okay.
can you give the court your recollection of events that happened?
I drove across town to Territorial. I picked Grayson up. I brought him home. He stated what had happened. I called my mother and my grandmother. I unsure of what to do.
Ms.
Decided
DeLong,
to call. Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but when you say unsure of what to do, can you elaborate on that?
I was informed that he had been slapped across the face.
Your Honor,
And
objection. Hearsay.
Sustained.
Unsure of what to do without the information that you were told.
To let it go or call CPS, and I decided to call CPS to make sure that it was looked into.
Ms. DeLong, can you continue with what happened after you drove to Territorial?
I picked him up and brought Grayson home.
And when you picked Grayson up, where was he physically located?
Him and his dad had just pulled back up to the house. During their altercation, Grayson was told to get the
Objection, Your
fuck out.
Honor, unless she was there and there's been no foundation laid saying that she was there.
Ms. Smith, lay a foundation.
Well, Ms. DeLong said that she drove to the Territorial address. And
When I got there, they were pulling up. Ryan had to drive up the street to pick our son up because he took off walking. So when I got there to get Grayson, they were just pulling back into the driveway.
is that suitable, Your Honor?
Excuse me?
Is that suitable before I continue?
No, it isn't if you're trying to get in a conversation.
Well, Ms. DeLong, what did you observe when you went to pick Grayson up? Other than the defendant pulling into the driveway?
He had to go inside and get his shoes, that he was barefoot and he had no coat on.
What was the weather outside like at that time?
Cold. It was January.
After you
I'm
picked,
not sure if there was snow at the time or not. It was cold. It was winter time.
after you picked Grayson up, where did you take him?
Back home to my house.
And how long did you have Grayson before he returned back to the defendant?
He stayed the night with me and I took him to school the next morning.
And after school, did he return to the defendant, to your knowledge?
Yes.
Ms. DeLong, since the entry of the last custody order, have you been in a relationship?
No.
And since 2019, have you engaged in any alcohol or substance abuse usage?
No.
Ms. DeLong, do you belong to any religious or social groups?
Kingdom Builders.
And what is Kingdom Builders?
The church that we go to, the Bible study we go to.
How long have you been going to Kingdom Builders?
A little over a year now. A year and a few months.
When you exercise your parenting time with Grayson, does he also go to Kingdom Builders with you?
Yes.
Do you have family in this immediate area, Ms. DeLong?
No.
Where is your family?
Coldwater, Quincy.
And how would you describe your relationship with your family?
We're pretty close. Even though we live a little bit of way, we're pretty close. We're always there for each other.
How would you describe the relationship between Grayson and your youngest son?
Pretty close. They're normal siblings with 6-year age difference, so they kind of bump heads, but they are really close.
And how would you describe your family dynamic between you, Grayson, and your youngest son?
We have a pretty strong bond. Like I'm not sure.
Well, when you say you have a strong bond, can you kind of elaborate or give an example?
All of my free time is spent with them. We have a strong bond. We do a lot of things together. We make memories. We cook, we bake, we eat dinner at the table. We say grace over our food. Like we are a quality spending time together family. I'm not sure.
So when Grayson is in your care, do you eat dinner together every night that he's there?
Every night I make dinner. Every night I cook dinner.
And when you're not working and Grayson is in your care, how many hours of the day would you say you spend with him?
I'm sorry, one more time.
When you're not working and Grayson is in your care and custody during your parenting time, how many hours of the day would you say you spend with him?
Majority of it, the boys might be in the living room and I might be on TV in my room. You know what I mean? But we're in the same home. We're on the same level. My house is one level. It's not a huge house. We're not on top of each other either, but we're always together. I usually have an eye on my kids.
When you're exercising parenting time with Grayson and he has homework, do you participate in helping him with that?
Absolutely. Both of my boys, we're on homework as soon as we get out of school. That we get that done and out of the way. We do reading logs. We read books. We go to the library and get new books. I very much want my boys to have the best education, whatever I have to do to help. I want them to have a way better life than I ever had.
And when Grayson was at Lakeview Middle School, was he involved in any sports?
He was just recently on the football team, 7th grade football team. And more in the winter, he would be in basketball. He's recently moved and he's not on the team right now.
What was your involvement in those sports activities during your parenting time and even outside of your parenting time?
As long as I knew the schedule, I was there. I would, if Ryan had to work, I would get him there. I would help in any way, shape, or form to practice, to the actual games. Any possible way I could be active, I was for it. I'm for my kids doing well.
And if you have a disciplinary issue with Grayson, in what way do you discipline him?
Now that he's getting older, it's kind of easier to just kind of sit down and have a heart to heart. Grayson likes to, in the past, he shuts down. He shuts down. He does not open up. He is the I'm fine type and shrug it off. And I've been sitting down trying to open up to my sons so that they get to know what type of person I am, so that they realize that I'm not the enemy, and to break it down, to explain that this is why we have rules. This is why we have to have homework. More or less be their friend, but have that open communication so that he doesn't think that I'm just yelling or screaming at him or threatening him, that there's reasons just to overall understand things better. We try to sit down and talk more. He's not an easy boy to get out of his shell, but the more you try and the more consistent you are, he has been coming out recently as he's getting older and maturing himself. He's kind of learning who he is still. So he's slowly opening up to where we can just talk things out more or less. So he understands why there's punishment or, cause and effect or whatever. If he does this or doesn't do his homework, then that's why you lose this. So he has more of an understanding, is what I've been working on.
And when Grayson is not feeling well, do you stay home to care for him while you're exercising your parenting time?
If it's my time, absolutely.
Who is the main purchaser of clothes, toys, food in your home?
In my home, myself, just me.
And does that include also for Grayson?
My mother helps a lot at holidays, and I have my family. If times the grandparents just have to have a reason to buy stuff too for the grandkids.
And how involved would you say your mother is in those kind of activities and in your younger son and Grayson's life?
I would say a lot. If my boys ever needed something, they know to call grandma. And if she can't do it, she's going to do what she can to figure it out. She comes through for basketball shoes or sports stuff.
As far as school, Ms. DeLong, when Grayson was at Lakeview Middle School, did you attend parent-teacher conferences, and were you active in his classes?
As much as I could be, yes. I was only allowed to do so much, but I tried to be as active as I could. I would log in on my phone to check his grades. I wouldn't allow any type of video games or any type of fun until I saw his grades or questioned him why his grades were, you know what I mean? I stayed involved.
And while Grayson was attending Lakeview Middle School, how would you describe his school performance?
He was doing all right here, but I don't think there was somebody there pushing him to help him do his work, I guess, to teach him.
When you say that you don't believe there was someone to push him or teach him, is it in your opinion that Grayson needed additional help or tutelage with his schooling?
Yes. If Ryan, if we couldn't do it, he needs someone to kind of push him in that right direction. He's got a short attention span, but with the guidance and somebody there consistently, he's very smart. He's very intelligent. He knows the work. It's just to get him to do the work, to focus, to turn it in, those types of things.
How would you describe Grayson's school attendance while he was at Lakeview Middle, to the best of your knowledge?
Just recently, I
Wow,
think it was fine. I think it was fine with the grandmother, not with the great grandma. The other, Ryan's actual mother worked at Lakeview. She works at Lakeview Middle School. she was right down the hall at the 6th grade wing. So he had family actually in the building that could light a match underneath him if need be. If he wasn't focusing, she could be right there on top of it.
Did you notice any change in Grayson's schooling or attendance after the 2019 custody order?
Yes, he just seemed to just coast. He just coasted and passed through. He didn't really strive or go above and beyond. I didn't really see him just getting an effort. He just did what he had to do to get through, kind of. Every summer up until this past summer, he was referred to for summer school. He had never needed summer school prior to that.
And while exercising your parenting time, when you would have Grayson, what kind of things would you do to try and help him in those educational areas where he may have lacked?
If I could get him to bring the laptop home, we would pull the laptop out and work on any missing assignments. There was always kind of an issue. If he didn't bring the laptop home, I was kind of at a standstill. I couldn't really call the school, not having custody. So I had barriers, but whatever I could do, we would do. I would make math problems and work on those with him. We just sit at the table and do what work we could if it was able for me to help. They don't really have paper. They don't send paper home. It's a lot of online. You know what I mean? So it's difficult if he doesn't have his school computer. And sometimes that would be the issue.
Ms. DeLong, do you recall prior to school starting here in Battle Creek, Grayson having a school orientation?
To meet.
And do you recall who attended the Meet the Teacher?
Ryan's mother, Tammy.
Did anyone else attend?
Ryan's grandmother was in the parking lot waiting in the car.
Did you attend the Meet the Teacher?
Yes. My 6-year-old son were there.
Was the defendant at the Meet the Teacher?
No, he was not. He was in Little Rock.
Objection, no foundation for that knowledge.
Ms. Smith, if you can lay a foundation.
Did the defendant attend the Meet the Teacher without stating where he may have possibly been?
No, he was.
And do you recall what events happened at the Meet the Teacher? Just how was the flow of it?
It was actually a little hectic. Ryan's mother, Tammy, her cell phone only worked via Wi-Fi. It was only connected on Wi-Fi, so I couldn't contact her. So it took us a while to even find Grayson and Tammy. They were almost done with it when I did finally find them in one of the classrooms. Grayson wanted to go and get some help trying to get his locker figured out, but the grandmother wanted to check out these binders. There was a table set up where it had everything that your student was going to need: the binders, the folders, the markers, everything all in one pouch. So we got in line to inquire about that. And then we went and worked on Grayson opening his locker across from his homeroom class. First hour class. I'm not sure what it's called. Study hall.
And what grade was Grayson starting this year?
7th.
In your opinion, Ms. DeLong, how important was the Meet the Teacher event?
I thought it was potentially pretty important so that he was nervous or any type of anxiety, just first day jitters. I thought it's important to have him be prepared for it, knowing his locker combination, knowing exactly where his classes were, so that he was set up for success and not set for failure.
This binder that you referred to, can you kind of elaborate to the best of your knowledge what was inside of the binder and what was it needed for?
It was for the 7th graders. Every classroom had a notebook. Every classroom had a folder. It was one of those, I don't know, couple inch thick type binders. I think it might have had like a pencil case in there, just anything you could think of for back to school, all in one binder so that the students had it and didn't have to worry about multiple classes and multiple things, I guess.
Was there a cost associated with this binder?
Yes, I believe they were $15.
Was the binder mandatory for the students to have?
No, it wasn't mandatory, but they did have a school supply list. He needed stuff regardless, whether it was what was in that binder or if you went and bought your own. But there were things that Grayson needed for school, yes.
Ultimately, did Grayson end up getting the binder?
Yes, I purchased it for him that day. That way he was all set. School started, I believe, the next day or so. And within the first day or two of school actually starting, they were going to be delivered to the actual students. So he didn't have to pick it up. He didn't have to worry. They were actually going to bring it to him in his classroom. There was no way he could mess it up or lose it. You know what I mean? Like it was all set for him to have.
And this Meet the Teacher event, was this event during your parenting time or during the defendant's parenting time?
Defendants. Grandmother called me on the way to the parenting event with like 10-minute notice, but I got there. I was a little late, but I got there, but I had no notice.
To your knowledge, Ms. DeLong, did Grayson receive all of the school supplies that he needed to start the school year?
I believe so, yes.
Did you purchase any school supplies other than the binder?
Shoes, couple outfits, the binder. He didn't want his haircut. I tried getting him a haircut. He didn't want to cut his hair. I believe that was it to start off with. Some notebooks, just some like college rule type notebooks, just some little things just to make sure that it was enough.
To your knowledge, Ms. DeLong, did Grayson receive school supplies from any other source without specifically naming, just to your knowledge?
I believe so. I believe some, yes.
Ms. DeLong, to your knowledge, does Grayson have any other siblings other than your youngest son?
Yes, he does.
In your opinion, how would you describe his relationship with his siblings?
Is there a foundation for how she would know that?
Well, if she has a foundation.
Ms. DeLong, do you know any of Grayson's other siblings?
Yes.
And what other siblings of his do you know?
I know his sisters that are adults. They're grown and adults now. I know his two baby brothers, Braxton and Rowan. And I know he has 3 other brothers, but I don't know those children. They all reside here in Battle Creek, I believe.
And how do you know his 2 younger brothers that you just stated? I'm sorry, I can't recall the names, but how?
I'm best friends with their mom. I was best friends with their mom.
And how would you describe Grayson's relationship with them?
Good. He misses them. Good.
Your Honor, I have no further questions.
Okay. Ms. McNiff, cross-examination.
Ms. DeLong, you've been diagnosed with bipolar disorder in the past. Is that correct?
When I was barely 18, they thought that I might have had it, but no, I'm not diagnosed. I'm not on any medications.
And you indicated that you're working for a house cleaning business. And what is your current income?
$16 to $20 an hour plus tips.
And how many?
Depending on the size of the house. 30 plus hours a week. And then if I want to, I can volunteer on the weekends.
And do you know what your total gross income was for 2022?
No, not off the top of my head. Sorry.
Do you have any idea what your year-to-date is for 2023?
No, I'm sorry, I don't.
And how many hours per month do you believe that you pick up any overtime?
Not very often. It's
And,
usually just, if so, it's a few hours at if it is on the weekend, it's not full long shifts. It's just a few hours here and there. Excuse me for stuttering.
and do you have any health insurance costs?
No.
Do you pay for any uniform fees?
No.
Now, you indicated that in January of this year, you contacted CPS because you were concerned about physical discipline. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And were you aware that that CPS report was not substantiated? And this fall, after Mr. Cromwell moved to Arkansas, is it correct that he allowed you to have parenting time with Grayson during Little Rock's fall break?
As long as I could pay for the fuel or if I could transport him back. He offered him to me Sunday evening for Monday day. He gave me about 12-hour notice, but I had to either pay for the gas or help drive him back. But yes, he did give me 4 days with Grayson.
And would you agree that that was an unsuspected holiday?
I never had heard of a fall break yet. I've never heard of such a break. I didn't know that thing existed. I apologize.
And you had testified that you had a standard parenting time arrangement, but in fact, referee Bradfield changed that parenting time schedule. Is that correct?
Just recently, I believe, yes, to spring break, winter break, and summer.
And there were some other provisions as well, but the court can take judicial notice of that order.
Okay.
But would you agree that that fall break was not in referee Bradfield's finding in terms of parenting time that you were allotted?
I'm not sure because I don't believe Ryan ever stated anything about a fall break. I'm not sure.
So you indicated that you went to meet the teacher this past fall, correct?
Correct.
Do you recall, but your attorney asked you if you had gone to parent-teacher conferences, and I don't think that you completely responded to that question.
I was never involved in the teacher conferences. Teacher conferences, they were in contact with Ryan or Ryan's girlfriend. I never got a chance to go to any type of conference. And when questioned about it, I'd always get the runaround about it. So I unfortunately, I don't know.
Have you always been aware of what school Grayson was attending? And have you been able to contact the school regarding parent-teacher conferences?
No.
And why weren't you able to call the school and ask them about parent-teacher conferences?
That was all associated with Ryan. That was all Ryan. And with me not having sole custody, I didn't think I had the right to.
Did you make any inquiries of the school as to whether you could find that information out?
I inquired it with Ryan.
Grade, if you recall, was Grayson in 2019 when custody changed.
Third.
And it's your testimony that after custody changed, Grayson was required to go to summer school each summer?
Yes.
Was it your understanding that that was true in 2019, the summer of 2019 as well?
After the transferring of schools, I don't recall that summer actually. That it was all new to me. So I'm not sure on that specific year. I apologize.
So you indicated that you didn't think that after 2019 Grayson was striving in school. If you weren't able to contact the school with regard to parent-teacher conferences, were you able to get grade reports?
When Grayson could pull it up on the laptop or on my cell phone, when I could get Grayson to show me, because Ryan would never provide the grades when asked.
And you never checked in with the school to see if you could get a login for yourself?
I didn't believe I had the right to, with him having sole custody.
I have no further questions.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Smith, any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. DeLong, in terms of your hourly rate wage of between $16 and $20 per hour plus tips and 30 hours a week, which is what you just stated, do you believe that you generate enough income to care for yourself, your younger son, and Grayson?
I have been for over a year and a half. I'm not on welfare. I'm not on food stamps. I'm not on Section 8. And it has been enough to maintain it. And with my hours being lesser, I have the opportunity to work more if need be. If my if my other son goes away to his father's, then I have the weekend where I can work, and it's my off weekend with Grace. You know what I mean? I have the opportunity to make more money if I need to. There's plenty of houses that the company I work for has a lot of work.
And when the defendant informed you that Grayson had a fall break, but asked if you could pay for the fuel so that he could get to Michigan and back, were you able to help with those fuel costs?
Absolutely. I wanted to see Grayson. I absolutely did.
And when you stated that when you asked the defendant about parent-teacher conferences or grades or other school things involving Grayson, and that you would get the runaround, do you believe that the defendant had the intention to try and work with you to co-parent with you on that issue, or made it difficult to do so?
I feel like it was difficult. It's pretty much, I feel like it's a cutthroat. Look, this is the conferences, this is the date, this is his grades, this is what we need to do. It shouldn't be very much run around. The important thing is Grayson. That's all that matters. It shouldn't be like pulling teeth to see what his grades are or to see what the teachers have to say.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, anything else, recross, Ms. McNiff?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Next witness, Ms. Smith.
I would like to know if Miss Tina DeLong is in the waiting room. Okay, I would like to call Miss Tina DeLong.
Okay. We'll bring
Hear me?
Yes.
Ms. DeLong, I'll ask, I see you're in a vehicle. Are you traveling or are you sitting?
I'm getting ready to pull over, sir.
Okay, please do that before we swear you in and do anything.
All right. All right. Sorry about that. I am a post manager at an American Legion down in Hillsdale, and we're in the middle of a remodel getting ready to open tomorrow. So I'm multitasking this morning.
Okay. Well,
All right.
once we swear you in, please don't multitask then.
I'm done multitasking.
Okay. Are you parked now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Ms. DeLong, we're going to have you raise your right hand, have you sworn in, then we'll proceed.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Go ahead, Ms. Smith, when you're ready.
Miss DeLong, can you just please state and spell your last name for the record?
Capital D, lowercase e, capital Long.
And your first name?
Tina, Tina.
Miss DeLong, what is your relationship to Danielle DeLong?
I am her mother.
And do you know the defendant, Mr. Ryan Cromwell?
I do.
And to your knowledge, what was the relationship between Miss DeLong and Mr. Cromwell?
And broke up after that. It was very, I wouldn't say uncivil, but it wasn't very cordial.
Are you aware of the 2019 custody order involving Grayson?
Yes, I am.
Ms. DeLong, since the entry of the 2019 custody order, how would you say Danielle has, in your opinion and in your observation, has dealt with that custody order as far as Grayson goes?
She has been more than willing to get him more than, whenever, I would say whenever he needed her to pick him up, or if there was an issue, Danny was there to pick him up. She was always there on her weekends to get him.
Since the entry of the 2019 order, have you noticed any changes in Ms. DeLong's personal and social life?
Oh, a lot of changes. I am so proud of everything she has overcome.
And when you say you're proud of everything she's overcome, can you just kind of elaborate on some of the things that you have personal knowledge about?
When this court custody first came into place, Danielle was in a very bad relationship. She has since then gotten out of that relationship. She has found a job and she has been employed with the same company since COVID. She has had the same apartment since before COVID. She doesn't ask for help. She is very self-conscious of her choices. She, with this job now, can spend time with her other son, Cameron, and on the weekends, she is able to spend time with both of the boys when it's her weekend to have both of the boys. She has started going to church a couple months ago. She did get baptized. Just a lot of changes. She has grown a lot since the one relationship. She has become more of a mother. Let's put it that way.
And Ms. DeLong, in your observation, how would you describe the relationship between Danielle and Grayson?
When she gets Grayson, she has to be the one to make sure that the homework is getting done. She spends more time parenting than being a friend. Yes, she's a friend, but she knows that parenting has to come into play because he, from what I have seen, doesn't get much parenting.
Objection,
when
Your
he's
Honor.
with-
No foundation laid for that statement.
Sustain unless the foundation can be laid.
Ms. DeLong, just your observation of their relationship without mention of other parenting influences, just Danielle's.
Okay. Spent her weekend getting him caught up in the missing homework assignments. Danny's very centered in having him succeed and do better. And also as much as fit in and still be a kid.
And Ms. DeLong, how would you describe the family dynamic between you, Danielle, Grayson, and her younger son, Cameron?
Living down in Quincy, I see them as much as I can. When we do, I mean, I've gone to church with them. Afterwards, we go have breakfast, at noontime, but still it's breakfast. We've went school clothes shopping together. We do holidays together. They come to my house for Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, after they get done with all of those holidays at their house or her house.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any cross?
No cross, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Long, that concludes your testimony. You're excused. Have a good day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. DeLong.
Thank you.
Next witness, Ms. Smith.
Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to call the defendant, Ryan Cromwell.
Okay, Mr. Cromwell, we're going to have you raise your right hand and be sworn in, and then we'll proceed.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Go ahead, Ms. Smith.
Mr. Cromwell, since the entry of the 2019 custody order, have you been able to hold down residency for yourself?
Yes.
And how many locations has that been?
2 until I moved to Little Rock. So 3 until I moved to Little Rock. Sorry.
And were those places that you secured on your own or with someone else?
One was with someone else. The other one was by myself, and then the other one was with someone else.
Mr. Cromwell, do you have access to Exhibit 1?
Yes.
Can you read the text messages in Exhibit 1s and 2 and 3? 1, 2, and 3, please.
Says then what's going on? So I'm probably moving out of state, just so you know. Why? And I said I'm not talking about it.
I'm gonna object to the hearsay with regard to the other party that is involved in the text message. Mr. Cromwell's statements are acceptable, but we need to establish who he's talking to in this text message, and I would ask the court to exclude any of the responses from that person.
Well, Ms. Smith, if you can lay the foundation and that we can proceed.
Okay. Mr. Cromwell, do you recall sending text messages in May 27th of 2013 to a Miss Michelle Burt?
I remember having a conversation with her. Yes,
And who is she in relation to you?
she is my youngest son's mother. My two
And
boys' mother.
do the statements in exhibits 1, 2, and 3 look familiar to you?
Yeah, I remember we were having a debate and argument about something. Yes.
Mr. Cromwell, can you read the statements that you made in exhibits 1, 2, and 3?
So
And
I'm
I
probably
believe
moving
those
on.
are the ones in the darker colored.
So I'm probably going to move out of state, just so you know. So I'm not talking. Go ahead. And I said, I guess he stays. And so you think that's what I want to do? Jesus Christ. You want to come with me then? I'm moving sooner than later. Stuck around here for my kids. It cuts off. And then in exhibit 2, I said, homeless. I have nowhere to take the boys tomorrow or Monday. Happy now. Glad I got that embarrassment out of the way. Jesus Christ. Why were you crying yesterday? Oh, wait, you're not going to tell me. So I dropped it.
Okay, sir, when you're reading the message, please read the complete messages, even though it might have vulgarities in it.
Okay. I'm sorry. I didn't want to use the vulgarity if I didn't have to.
Well, you're reading the messages, so we want to make sure that it's accurate.
Okay. I'm sorry. I said, so I fucking dropped it, but you won't. You just keep coming. Jesus fucking Christ. So yeah, I'm moving. Just me. You happy now? I said, she's still living there. She didn't kick me out, but I'm not going back. So there's that. Conversation's about done. About it is done. So OMG, I wasn't even, never mind. I wasn't SMH. I'm good. Last thing I'm thinking about right now. Sleeping in the car, for Christ's sake. Last time I ever mentioned you having someone, you said you didn't. So no need to try to make me think that whatever you were trying to do with that comment, never asked or said anything about it. And I said, don't fucking call my grandmother. And that was it.
Mr. Cromwell, when you stated that you were moving out of state and that you were homeless, what was your living situation like at that time before those statements were made?
I was living with my current girlfriend, McKenzie Densmore.
And what prompted you to make those statements to Miss Burt?
We were having a disagreement about something. You know, Shelly, she will push and push and push until she gets the answers that she wants. So I finally just had enough and just said what I had to, try to get her to leave me alone.
When you said what you had to, what do you mean by that?
Try to say what she wanted to hear to make her happy with the conversation we were having.
Can you read specifically in the exhibits, either 1, 2, or 3, what it was that you said that she wanted to hear, that you think she wanted to hear?
And I told her I was homeless so that we were having a debate. She wanted me to take my boys on a day that I wasn't taking them. I wasn't having a great day. So I was like, I'm not taking them. So when I told her I was homeless, that was me just trying to make her understand that I'm not taking the boys today. I said, because right after that, I have nowhere to take the boys tomorrow or Monday because she wanted me to keep them all weekend. And then, so that was a part of it. That was just a conversation that we were having.
So, Mr. Cromwell, if I'm hearing you correctly, you told her that you were homeless to avoid the parenting time you had with the children.
It wasn't my current parenting time. It would have been extra parenting time. They weren't allowed. Well, I don't say they weren't allowed that. I couldn't have them at my grandmother's at that point in time. So I tried to tell her that, but that wasn't good enough. She was going to call my grandmother and have me take them over there. They were out of town. I don't like taking people to my grandmother's house, even though they are my kids. They just, without them being there, without their knowledge. So Shelly didn't want to listen. So I had to put it in a way to hopefully try to just change her mind on what was happening. It was a debate that we were having, and it was taken, she took it literal when it wasn't literal.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that you told Miss Burt that you were homeless to avoid taking the boys. In your opinion, Mr. Cromwell, does that seem a bit extreme to tell someone that you're homeless to avoid taking your children?
In the middle of the argument, I didn't look at it as extreme. We were arguing, and I was just trying to get her to leave me alone.
In your opinion, if a stranger to the situation, but a reasonable person read these text messages with the exclamation points used, would it be in your opinion that a reasonable person would actually believe that you were homeless based on your statements in the text messages?
I can see how an outsider looking in would think that, yes.
Some of these texts are very specific and seem very just with the verbiage used and the punctuation. Is it in your opinion that looking back now, you could have given her another explanation for why you weren't taking the boys?
I mean, I'm sure I could have come up with something different. We could have had a different conversation. At the time, that's how the conversation was flowing. I ended up getting my boys anyway. They were with me the whole weekend. All she wanted was me to take the boys for the weekend so she can go work or go do what she had to do. And like I said, it was a debate. It was an argument. We were in the middle of an argument.
In the text, you also stated that she's still living there. She didn't kick me out, but I'm not going back. So there's that. What was that statement referring to?
Me and McKenzie had gotten into an argument that morning, and I was in a bad mood that day.
Did you leave your home with McKenzie that day?
Yes, I went to my grandmother's, which is where I was born and raised. So I'm used to going home. So if I ever need to get away for a minute, that's where I go.
Did you have intentions of returning back to the home you shared with McKenzie that day? Mr. Cromwell, have you ever been homeless?
No.
Since the 2019 custody order, how many relationships have you had?
2.
And during those relationships where the two of you and the other person resided, was the home theirs? Was it yours together, or was it strictly yours?
With Shelly, it was her house, but when I moved in, it became our house. And then I moved out, got myself an apartment, and when me and McKenzie got back together, it was more cost effective for us to have one place because we were spending all our time together. So we decided whose place was better, and that's what we did. I was paying bills and rent at both places.
When you say you decided whose place was better, whose place was that?
It was McKenzie's house. She had a house she was renting, had a backyard, a little bit more room. So it just that her house made more sense.
So at the time when you had your apartment, approximately how long did you have your apartment alone?
I had my apartment for a year. I paid for it for a year, but I probably started spending more time at McKenzie's house, about 6 months.
And you had Grayson with you during this time?
Yes.
Since the 2019 custody order, how would you say you discipline Grayson?
He gets grounded. I take stuff away from him. We have conversations about what he did wrong, and if he understands why what was wrong about it. If he understands why he's getting punished for what he was doing, that kind of thing. Would I get upset when he shuts down sometimes, but I never really use physical abuse.
Mr. Cromwell, can you refer to Exhibit 6 and 7 of plaintiff's exhibits? Do the messages on Exhibit 6 look familiar to you?
Not really. I mean, that was taken.
So you do not recall this conversation?
I mean, I don't recall it, but I mean, it obviously looks like he was talking to, I'm assuming he was talking to me because he needed to go to bed. It was 5 o'clock in the morning.
Mr. Cromwell, can you read your part of the text message starting at the 12:57 a.m. timestamp?
dude, if you don't take your ass to bed, I'm gonna come down there and beat you. Now.
Mr. Cromwell, would you say that if a reasonable person were to read these text messages, they would believe that that was the form of discipline you used on your child?
And it was 5 o'clock in the morning. I told him to go to bed. I don't know if they would think that I was actually beating him or just trying to scare him to go to bed.
Would you say that you often use the phrase, "I'm gonna beat you," as a tactic to scare the child or to get him to do what you wanted him to do?
No.
Could you refer to Exhibit 7?
Okay.
And does this conversation look familiar to you?
Yeah, this was a very bad moment that Grayson had.
So you do recall the events that took place surrounding these messages?
Yes.
Can you just please read the messages after the January 30th, 5:23 p.m. timestamp from you?
Come get your son before I knock his head off. He's grounded for life. But if he doesn't get out of here for a little while, I might beat him. Sick of this attitude he has. Not sure where it came from, but I'm done with it. Well, he choked Logan, which is his brother, for starters. He's about to get an attitude adjustment, slamming doors, screaming at me, kicking and throwing and breaking shit. I don't know who this little boy thinks he is, but he is about to get an ass whooping.
So in these text messages, you once again refer to beating the child. Is this the discipline that you often partake in or make reference to when you're having a disciplinary issue with Grayson?
No, but it's not. He had choked his little brother, his 5-year-old little brother. I tried to get him to calm down. He slammed the door. He was about to throw his Xbox. He swung at me. So I called his mom and said, I need you to come pick him up. I did do that. I texted her, said, you need to come get him. And I was, the way that I put in the text message, yeah, I understand, but I use that kind of punishment with him.
To your recollection and in your observation, Mr. Cromwell, what may have or possibly sparked Grayson to act out during this time period?
Normally he gets mad is because Logan was messing with him while he was playing his game or just being a little brother. Grayson didn't want to be bothered, and I wasn't there. I don't know what happened. We were in a different room. We were in the kitchen or in the living room, and Logan came running up the steps and screaming like he just got hurt bad. And I asked him what happened, and he said Grayson choked me. So then I went and approached Grayson, and then everything happened after that.
Well, once again, Mr. Cromwell, if another person were to read these texts and see where you say, I'm going to knock his head off, I might beat him, do you believe it would be fair to think that someone would actually believe that you may beat the child?
I mean, if a person from the outside that didn't know our relationship would see that, they would assume that something like that would happen. Yeah, possibly.
And Mr. Cromwell, why would you make those kinds of statements if you didn't have any intention on using physical or corporal punishment on the child?
Some things that just you say when you're upset. I was trying to convey to his mother she needed to come get him now. He needed a break. We needed a break from each other, I'm assuming. Like I said, he took a swing at me. So there needed to be calmer heads, and I figured, his mom would help be able to calm heads. That was, I was trying to co-parent and get her involved to see if there's something we could do to figure out why he was acting this way.
In reference to Exhibit 6, where at the end of the second paragraph text, I'm going to beat you. Would it be, in your opinion, that a typical 12-year-old would believe that would actually happen?
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. That's why I said it, so that he would go to bed.
Would you say that you often make these threats to Grayson?
No. But we have a playful relationship,
Two instances here where you made comments about physically disciplining him. In your opinion, do you think, would it be your opinion that when you say those things to Grayson, he finds it as playful banter, or that he has some type of fear or apprehension that may happen?
No, I don't. There's no fear, because if there was fear, he would have not stayed awake until 5 o'clock in the morning.
Have you ever physically disciplined Grayson?
No. If I have it, there's nothing. I mean, I'm not beating him blue. If that's what you're asking.
No.
I've swatted his butt
Physical
before. Yes.
discipline.
Yes. I've swatted his butt before. I've swatted all my kids on the butt before.
Have you ever swatted Grayson anywhere other than his bottom?
Swatted him on the mouth once that day when I told his mom to come pick him up. I didn't slap him across the face. It was a pop in the mouth when he yelled and screamed at me and tried to hit me.
Can you describe the pop in the mouth? Was it open-handed? Was it back?
It was just like a tap on the mouth.
Did Grayson show, in your opinion, and from what you recall, did he show any emotion after that? Any tearful?
It was a very emotional. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine. I'm just, any outward manifestations of emotion?
No, I mean, it was an emotional situation. The whole situation was an emotional situation. That happened. I told him to go, to go sit in the living room. I even called my mom, my grandmother. I don't know which one. I called them both. Those are my go-tos. I came back out and he had took off walking down the road. So it was an emotional point. So.
And during that time, if you recall, Ms. DeLong testified to contacting CPS after that situation. Do you have a recollection of what happened with the CPS call?
Yeah,
Did
he came.
anyone ever come to your house?
Yes, he came to my house. We had a conversation. He looked around. I was cooperative. That was about it. He told me that I should take Grayson to the doctor. So we took him to the doctor and did that test. So we did all, everything he told me to do, just so, I could have the record of it.
Mm-hmm. Was there any follow-up from CPS after that? Mr. Cromwell, can you refer to Exhibit 4 of plaintiff's exhibits? Do you recall this conversation, or do any of the text in this conversation look familiar to you?
I remember I've had plenty of conversations about Grayson and his work at school. So,
Mr. Cromwell, would you mind just reading your portion of the text in Exhibit 4?
What are you doing? You better be. Send me your attendance. Dude, 17 assignments. You're going to be staying in for lunch and after school every day until you get those turned in.
And Mr. Cromwell, can you also refer to Exhibit 5? Do you recognize this grade report?
It looks like one of his, it just shows his grades at that point in time. Yes. We looked at them all the time.
Can you see the dates on this particular grade report? I know it's a little.
No, 4/26. No, yeah, say 4/26, 2023.
Mm-hmm. Can you see the grades and each class on the grade report?
Language arts was an E, math is the B, social studies was an E, gym, I think that's fitness, athletic education was A.
Seeing as how you currently, since the 2019 custody order, have physical care and custody of Grayson, how much effort and time would you say that you put into aiding Grayson in his homework and his school assignments?
As much as I can every day. If it's not me, then it was somebody in my household. I was in constant communication with the teachers that he had those grades in. We had a plan that was part of him going and staying in on lunch and going after school and doing what we can. They sent progress reports, so I was as involved as I could be.
In reference to Exhibit 6, I believe it is, would it be, in your opinion, that someone who was in constant communication with their child's teacher would allow their child to fall 17 assignments behind?
I mean, I was in constant communication. I talked to the teachers all the time. Every time I talked to him, then it was one teacher. It was one teacher that he had these issues with. It wasn't multiple teachers. A lot of the stuff he wouldn't turn in, she wouldn't let him turn them in. So we made a plan so that he could try to get that grade up, which he ended up by the end of the school year getting those grades up.
How often were you checking his grade reports and ensuring that he was doing his homework?
I'll check his grades every week, every couple of weeks, but I always make sure he had homework. The teachers were sending, they send me a weekly progress report to let me know what assignments he had missing, what assignments he didn't have missing. Let me know what he was doing at school, how his behavior was at school. He also would go to my mom and my grandmother's because my mom is a parapro. My grandmother was a teacher. So they would help tutor him to get him up to par. When I was at home, I worked. I was the main provider for the house, so I worked 40 plus hours a week.
So in reference to you just said that the teachers would send you weekly progress reports. If you were receiving weekly progress reports, once again, as in Exhibit 6, how do you believe it's possible or Exhibit 4, I'm sorry, how do you believe it's possible for him to have fallen 17 assignments behind?
He had fallen 17 assignments behind. That's when we started this, getting these progress reports, because that's the reason it happened, because he was so far behind. So we're like, well, you're this far behind, what's going on? I'd do his homework. He wasn't turning his homework in. So it's not like we were at home and he's just not doing anything. We do his homework, we check his homework. His homework was done on the computer. All he had to do was submit it on the computer, and he just wasn't turning it in. And then he had physical papers that he wasn't turning in when he got to school. So that's what we were, as the teacher, me, the parent, we're trying to figure out how can we get him to get back on track. So we decided to start getting these progress reports, and that's when we started getting him somewhat back on track, because like I said, he got his grades up by the end of the semester.
When you stated that you were in constant communication with the teachers, did it ever occur to you to also double check with them that they were receiving Grayson's homework and that he was turning it in?
Yes, once we realized he was getting so far behind, that is when we started making sure that everything was getting turned in.
Mr. Cromwell, when I look at Exhibit 5, I'm seeing dates of May 5th, 2023 and April 26th, 2023. Would you say that those dates are closer to the end of the school year?
Yeah, school ends at the middle of June.
So looking at Exhibit 5, it looks like he had an E in language arts and an E in social studies towards the end of the school year. If you had this communication with the teachers and were ensuring that Grayson was turning in his assignments and getting his work done and getting the help that he needed in May of 2023, to your knowledge, why would he have still had these 2 E's if you were actively involved in ensuring that he was turning his schoolwork in?
I'm not sure why the E's are there, but like I said, by the end of the school year, from what me and the teachers were doing, the single those 2 grades, he ended up getting his grades up by the end of the school year. He didn't finish with E's.
Mr. Cromwell, do you recall in Miss Danielle's DeLong, Miss Danielle, she made reference to a Meet the Teacher event that occurred prior to school starting here in Battle Creek?
Yes.
And this was an event that she attended, as well as your mother and your grandmother, but you were not in attendance. Where were you during this time?
I was in Little Rock, Arkansas.
And where was Grayson staying?
He had just got back from his mother, so he was with at that point, he was with my mom and my grandmother.
During that time when Grayson was staying with your mom and your grandmother, what would you say that the time period was that he stayed with your mom and grandmother while you were away?
was off and on. I was back and forth between here and home, trying to. The plan was, if we could get the domicile motion passed, that we were moving here. So I was setting up what I needed to here: job, house, schools, getting ready for that move if it was to happen. So
I'm sorry, go ahead.
he spent, it was time at my grandmother's time at McKenzie's house, where he was home. That was home for him because that's where we live. It was from June to July. I didn't move down here until, like, physically move until beginning of August, maybe. I was back and forth between here in August and September, back and forth multiple times.
How often in a month would you say you traveled back and forth between Little Rock and Battle Creek?
In the summers until I started, when I was still getting every other week, I would be every other week.
So during the week that Miss DeLong had Grayson, you would be in Little Rock, and then during your week, you would be here in Battle Creek?
Yep, I'd come back home for a few days, and then I would come back down here.
During the Meet the Teacher event, you stated that you were in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Yes.
Why were you not present here in Battle Creek if that was your parenting time week?
Again, like I said, she just dropped him off. I was coming back. I want to say that Tuesday or Wednesday, the Meet the Teacher was at, early in the week, but that was already established. I was down here, like I said, looking at work, home. I already been offered a job, so I was them trying to figure out, what we can do. I was looking at homes and houses and schools and trying to get that situated for him as fast as I possibly can, in case he was coming with me.
Give me just one moment. I'm sorry. Mr. Cromwell, do you have other children besides Grayson?
Yes.
How many other children do you have?
7.
And that's not including Grayson, correct?
No, not including Grayson.
And out of those 7 children, how many are adults?
2.
And who has custody of your other 5 children?
I have joint with one of them, and then, with their moms, but I see 3 of them. I've seen 3 of them on the regular since I haven't had them. So I've had 6 of my kids with me most of their lives.
So the mothers of the other 5 children have custody. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. And how often do you see those children?
Your Honor, I'm not sure what the relevance is of this line of questioning.
Okay. Ms. Smith, what's the relevance?
It goes to parenting style and parenting also. Mr. Cromwell doesn't have custody of his other 5 children. Grayson's the only child that he has custody of. Laying a foundation for why he does not have custody of those other 5 children.
Well, it's a little bit attenuated, but I'll give you some leeway on that. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So my daughters, who are grown, we had joint custody for the entirety of their lives. I have a great relationship with them. I obviously knows that. Braxton and Rowan, I was in their lives until me and their mother broke up, and then I was getting them every weekend. So I had them 3 days out of the week. Every weekend they'd come to my house and they would stay with me. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and they'd go home. I'd take them to school Monday morning. I'd pick them up from school Friday and go home Monday, take them to school Monday morning. The other 2 kids, of course, I do not see them. Me and their mother have a terrible relationship. And that's it. It's just been easier that way. It sounds as bad as it sounds. We haven't got off a relationship. It doesn't work.
And when is the last time you saw those 2 children? Do you just have an idea of a time period?
before Grayson was born. Probably before Grayson was born.
So around 12
12
years.
years, yes. I've talked to her, you know, I've seen how they were doing, but we don't. Every time that I would try to see them, every time that I would try to be involved, she would call the police or she would try to get me thrown in jail, and it didn't work. Like I said, as terrible as that sounds, I didn't want to go to jail because she kept trying to put me in jail.
How would you describe your parenting relationship with Miss Danielle DeLong
Now,
since the 2019 custody order?
we try to work together as best as possible. It's not always easy, but we try to, do what is best for Grayson as much as possible.
And when you say you try to do what's best for Grayson as much as possible, can you just kind of elaborate on that?
If he wants to go to his mom's, I let him go to his mom's. If I needed her to pick him up from school because I was working, or if she needed to have him stay for this weekend and switch weekends, we tried to work together as best we could so that she could get the time that she was old with him. If there was any kind of issues, we tried to talk them out as best we can, but for the most part, it was we did what we did at our own houses, and that's how that worked.
I'm sorry, are you currently in a relationship?
Yes.
In your opinion, how would you describe the relationship between Grayson and your current girlfriend?
It's good. He likes her. They get along just fine.
And how would you describe you and Grayson's relationship?
It's great. We're father and son. He's almost as tall as I am, so we butt heads. He's getting into his teenage years, I have to tell him to shower and put on deodorant and get off his video game and do his homework, but we joke, we have a good time. I play games with him, we go outside, and he wants to play football. He wants to play football so bad, so we go outside, I play football. He's trying out for basketball here this week. So we go outside and go to the park, or we do what we can, That's parent. I go to work, come home, we feed him, we talk about the day, ask him how his day was. And he tells me, oh, it was good. He's a 12, 13-year-old kid. I don't know.
How many hours a day do you work, Mr. Cromwell?
8 and a half. So it's a full-time job.
And around what time would you say that you get home from work?
Most days it's 6, a little bit after 6. 2 days out of the week, it's a little bit after 8. If it's the weekends, I'm out at 5.
And how much time of your day outside of work would you say you have to spend with Grayson?
The rest of the time. So if I get home at 6, he goes to bed around 9:30, 10 o'clock. So I'm spending that time with him. On the weekends, he gets to stay up a little bit later, so I'm spending that time with him.
And what is your
days off? I get 2 days off a week. So, when he's not at school, we spend that time. I go pick him up from school. We talk about just talk about his day.
And what is your current living situation in Little Rock?
I'm just waiting for my house to be finished, and we're moving in there beginning of November. Right now, I stay with my brother.
Who all resides in that household?
Me. It's my brother, his wife, and their 2 kids, and then me and Grayson.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Ms. McNiff, any direct examination?
Hey, I do have a question. Is Ms. Smith intend to call other witnesses?
I have no other witnesses, no.
May I conduct this as though we're both direct and cross of the direct?
Do
I
that
have
to
no
me again, Ms. McNiff. I didn't understand.
Oh, if I can incorporate my direct into my examination of Mr. Cromwell.
Well, I assume that's what you were doing because she had called in for cross, is my understanding. So it would be your direct.
Awesome. Thank you. Mr. Cromwell, can you describe the house that you're going to move into in November?
Yeah, it's a 3-bedroom, 2 floors. It's anything that I've had back in Battle Creek. So.
And does Ms. Moore intend to move in with you?
Yes, as a matter of fact, she's down here right now visiting to see everything.
And what's her time frame for moving?
We would like that to be before Christmas. But I think she's going to wait until at least by the semester ends back home in Battle Creek so that our son can finish that semester.
And so you'll have a 3-bedroom house. Where will everybody sleep?
We'll sleep in our room together. Grayson will have his room, and Logan, our son, will have his room.
Now, in the house where you and Ms. Densmore were residing in Battle Creek, did the boys have their own rooms or did they share a room?
Grayson shared a room with her 11-year-old son. So they shared a room together. And Logan had his own room. It was because he was the baby.
But in this situation, now Grayson will have his own bedroom?
He will for now because her son's going to stay there until the end of the school year.
And what's the name of your employer?
That's Cleo's Furniture.
And you said that you sometimes work weekends. Do you have, do you week or do you have a set schedule?
No, I work 5 days a week, so I get 2 days off. Most weekends I work. I don't always work on Sunday. They try to give us at least a Sunday off every month. But it's retail business hours.
What time do you start work in the morning?
If I go to work, it's either 2 shifts, 9 to 6 or 11 to 8. And then on Saturday, it's 9 to 5. On Sunday, it's 9 to 5. Or 12 to 5 on Sunday, sorry.
So are you available during the week to get Grayson ready to go to school?
Every morning, I wake him up at 7 o'clock. We get dressed. We make sure, brush his teeth, put on his deodorant, that kind of stuff. And then I take him to school. Or he rides with, right now, he can ride in with my sister-in-law if he wants to. But yeah, I'm up every morning with him before he goes to school.
Does your sister-in-law work at the school?
No, her kids they all go to the same school. Her kids go to that school. So he goes to school with his cousins, and it's on the way to work. So she takes him on the way to work. And
I know, are you working commission?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you have a base income that you receive?
If I don't hit minimum wage, then we get minimum wage, which here is $10.50, I believe. But I make more than that every check. So.
And do you have any feel for how your average is going to be per week or per month?
Yeah, I mean, I probably gross net. Gross, I'll probably do $5,000 or $6,000 a month gross.
And are you paying for any health insurance?
Yes.
And who do you cover on health insurance?
All of my kids. Including
the 2 adult children?
Still, yeah, for now.
Okay.
Chloe, probably my oldest, just got married, so I'm sure she's gonna fall off this year. I won't be able to have her on there anymore.
That's her husband's problem at this point.
That's her husband's problem.
And so do you know how much you're paying per month per paycheck for the health?
It's about $350 a month.
And do you have any care expenses for Grayson?
No.
And currently comes home from school, who is there?
Either I'm home or his uncle, or his aunt. So
You move your own house. What is the plan for making sure he's supervised after school?
Until McKenzie gets here, to be the same. He'll get rides from either me, his uncle, or his aunt. They don't live that far from where we're moving, so he'll stay and hang out with them, and then he'll come home with me when I get out of work, because we'll probably be over here hanging out because he loves it over here.
And where did you work before you had this job?
I worked at Xfinity for a little bit, but before that I worked at Value City Furniture and Art Van Furniture.
So is this current job in line with your previous experience?
Yeah, I was at Art Van for 9 years and then Value City for 1.5 years.
And have you had any significant periods of time where you were unemployed since you were working for Art Van?
No. When they went out of business, I worked for a car dealership for a couple of years, but that just wasn't for me. So I went back to furniture.
And I want to make this very clear. Since June of 2019, have you ever been homeless?
No,
Have you ever relied entirely on a girlfriend for your financial support?
no,
Have you ever relied on girlfriends to provide shelter for you and for Grayson?
no.
And who paid for the down payment on the house you're moving into in November?
I did.
And there were allegations in the motion to change custody that your home in Battle Creek has a basement. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Did you ever require Grayson to sleep in the basement?
No, the basement was, there was a room down there with his video games and a couch that he could go to if he wanted to ever get away. But his bed and everything was upstairs. So if he wanted to go downstairs because him and her son Owen just weren't getting along, you know, two 12-year-old boys not getting along, that he could go down and have his video games and stuff down there.
And is that where he and Logan were when the incident occurred that in January of this year?
Yes.
And let's talk a little bit about that. Ms. DeLong indicated that on that day when she arrived to pick up Grayson, that he was barefoot. Is that accurate?
I can't recall. I just know he took off walking down the street. So I jumped in my car to go get him back in the house.
And when CPS came to the house, did they speak with Grayson?
I think they went to the school and spoke to him.
Okay. Was there any requirement of you to go to counseling after CPS had the interview with you?
No, and the only thing that the CPS worked, he just recommended that I take Grayson to see his doctor.
Was there any recommendation with regard to the use of physical punishment?
No, they didn't say anything about that.
Have you ever Grayson being bullied at school?
Yes,
And how did you become aware of that?
he told me.
And did you intervene with the school?
I went and talked to, the first time I went and talked to the teachers, talked to the principal. They said they weren't aware of it. They said they would look into it. He came back home and told me it happened again, and this time was worse. So then I went up to the school again myself and said, I want to sit down with the principal, the teacher, the parents, anybody that was around when this stuff was happening. So we sat down with the parent and we talked about what was going on. That was that. After that, it stopped.
And did you talk at all to DeLong regarding the bullying?
I don't know if I had talked to her per se. I was with Miss Burt at the time. So I think Shelley had talked to Danielle about what was going on. They talked more than me and Danielle did.
Was Ms. Burt a conduit for communication between you and Ms. DeLong?
Sometimes, most of the time, yes.
More so than with your with Ms. Densmore?
Yes.
Since 2019, has Ms. DeLong exercised all of her parenting time?
For the most part. I mean, there's been times where getting or something like that, but for the most part, I know there was a time where Grayson didn't want to go, you know, so she let him stay home. But
Have you those kinds of issues directly with Ms. DeLong?
I'm sorry, you broke up.
Have you been able to resolve those kinds of parenting time issues with Ms. DeLong?
For the most part, if she didn't get her time, I would always try to make sure she got it, so that she wasn't missing out on that time. It didn't always work out, but you know, we would try to do the best we can so that she would get her time.
Do you feel that you and she have been flexible with each other in terms of parenting time?
Yeah, for the most part.
Since you gained custody in 2019, has the co-parenting between you and Ms. DeLong been different than it was prior to that time?
Yes.
And has it been better or worse?
It's been better.
And other than the incident in this summer of 2023, when you missed your parenting time, have you had any other issues with parenting time with Ms. DeLong?
Since 2019, no, not really. It's been pretty much what it's supposed to be.
And were you aware that in Little Rock the children have a fall break?
I was not. I found out. I just thought they had conferences, so they were off on Friday. So we went through the weekend, and I thought they had conferences, and then I found out that it was an actual whole week off, and I was like, well, that's convenient. So I called her and said, hey, do you want Grayson for the week? I can get him up to you if you can get him back to me.
And so did you request that she pay for fuel?
Yeah, I mean, just however she wanted to do. I said, I can get him up. I can pay for him to get there if you can pay for him to get back. She said that she couldn't drive him. She said, but I can give you the gas money to come back. I said, okay, it takes about $150 one way to get there. And that's what she gave us.
And do you have any issue in the future with Grayson spending fall break with his mom, even though that's not currently in the parenting time order?
As long, yeah, no, I don't have any issue with it. You know, he was off for the week. I was like, well, this would be a good time for him to go. So I called her and offered if she wanted to get him. I knew she probably would because she hadn't seen him for a little bit.
And
So it
how
just made sense.
has Grayson adjusted to his new school?
He loves it. He talks about it all the time. He loves his teachers. He's got male teachers, so he's excited about that. It's like the first time he's had male teachers, so he gets to. He's making friends. Like I said, they got basketball tryouts. He's really excited about trying out for basketball here in the next week. He likes being there.
Was he able to finish football?
No, he missed the last few weeks of football.
Is there a football program that he can participate in next year at his current school?
Not at his current school, but there are football programs that he'll be doing. Like I said, his brother coaches. My brother coaches on the football team with my nephew. So Grayson will be able to be on that team next year.
Now, during this past summer, were you present when Ms. DeLong would drop Grayson off after her parenting time?
For the most part, like I said, until late July, early August, when I started trying to get stuff around here together, I might not have been there every time, but I tried to be there as much as possible for her when she dropped him off.
Now, there are text messages with you threatening to beat Grayson, correct?
Yes.
And with you threatening to whoop his ass, correct?
Yes.
Have you ever beaten Grayson?
No. Like I said, I've swatted him on the butt before, but I've never physically just beat him. No.
Have you ever whooped his ass?
No.
How would you describe those text messages where you're saying those things? What's the point of that?
Just to convey the seriousness. The ones that I was talking to Danielle was just convey how serious the situation was. The one when he was up until 5 o'clock in the morning saying, "Hey, dude, you need to go to bed. Why are you still awake?"
So why was he awake at 5 a.m.?
He was playing this video game. I went down there. He actually, because I'll go to where he was downstairs. I knew he was downstairs because I could hear him. I said, "Grayson, you need to go upstairs and go get into bed." So he said, "Okay." He turned his game off. He followed me, but then he snuck back down there when he thought I was asleep to go play, which I probably was sleeping because he woke me up being loud at 5 o'clock in the morning. It's the only reason I knew he was awake.
So is there a reason why you didn't go back down there and instead you texted him?
So I was asleep and I was hoping the text message would get through, but I had to go down there anyway to tell him to go to bed.
Was this a school night or was this a weekend, if you recall?
It would have to have been a weekend because I make sure that he was not on the game during the week, during his school time.
Have you had other issues with him staying up until 5 a.m. to play video games?
No, not really. He stays up late. He'll stay up. I had to get him where he stayed up till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, okay, Grayson, it's time to go to bed. But in the summers, on the weekends when there's nothing going on,
Can you describe Grayson's behavior on that day on January 30th? And why that was such a different day?
Like I said, brother Logan came screaming that he was hurt. We asked him what was happening and I could barely hear him, but he said Grayson choked me. And I don't know, Grayson was angry. I don't know why. It wasn't like anything he's done before.
And why was it you reached out to his mom?
To help, to figure it out. That was his mom. This is a thing. This is something that he's never done. So we need to try to co-parent as best we can to see if there's a way that both of us can get to the root of why he did what he did. Choking somebody, let alone your little brother, that's not something we do. That's not a good thing. So I was just I wanted to get her involved. Something that serious.
You didn't text your grandfather.
That day, no. If I did, it was, I mean, I text her, I probably text everybody or called and talked to everybody because it was, I talked to my grandmother and my grandfather. Those are my parents. My grandmother and grandfather raised me.
If
Oh.
nobody had been available to come and get him, what do you think your next step would have been in terms of calming him down and calming yourself down?
I probably would have, I know I would have did. I would have sent him to his room, just to kind of get the separation. Just go to your room and don't come out until you can have a conversation with me.
Now that you've moved to Little Rock, are there people, family members, friends who could serve in that same function as Ms. DeLong did that day to provide a little separation?
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, my aunt lives here. So her and her husband, I have cousins that are all of 30 years older that live here that we all see and talk to all the time. So I mean, I have a ton of family that is here with me.
And let's talk a little bit about those text messages that you had with Ms. Burt about being homeless. Did you go back to your home with Ms. Densmore that same night?
No, I think I stayed at my grandma's that night, but I went back the very next morning.
And when you and Ms. Densmore argue, are the children aware that you're arguing?
No, and that was really the one and only time we've had an argument like that.
When you talked to CPS, did you describe to them how you touched Grayson on his lips when he was being disrespectful?
Yes, I did.
So the text message with regard to the 17 missing assignments, was that the first time that you were aware that he had that many missing assignments?
Yes.
And to your knowledge, did he ever get above 17 missing assignments?
No, like I said, once we got that text message, we immediately went into, well, how can we fix this?
And what's your intent in Little Rock? Do you think that you'll stay in the same place that you are currently? I mean, in the house that you're going to move in November.
Yeah, I mean, I will probably be there for a few years. I mean, eventually we want to, buy a house, find a place that we're going to be at for the duration. Right now it's just a rental, but it's somewhere I can see myself for a while because it's a nice place, a nice area, good school system.
Do you have any intention of moving outside of the current school system?
No, the only way that we would do that is when Grayson got into high school, maybe, so that he can play high school football because the school that he goes to doesn't have a football team.
Are you able to provide Grayson with his basic necessities?
Yes.
And do you have any problems providing him with food?
No.
Any problems providing him with clothing?
No.
And have you purchased school clothes for him?
Yes, and I just had to purchase more because the school he goes to, they require uniforms, something that we didn't have in Battle Creek. So he just got stuff for that.
Have you purchased, shoes for him in the past?
Yeah, I mean, purchase shoes. His mom likes to buy his shoes, so I usually let her. I mean, she, but if she didn't want to buy them, then I would get him shoes, and I've got him shoes. I got him shoes this year, so he's got multiple pairs of tennis shoes and dress shoes and stuff like that.
There was an allegation in the motion that you didn't provide him with a winter coat last year. Is that true?
No, we had got him a winter coat. He had ripped it, so I had to get him a new one. My grandmother bought him a coat for also, and I think his mom had bought him a coat. So he had 3 winter coats at one point. And
do you take Grayson to the doctor?
Yes.
Have you ever requested that Ms. DeLong assist you with taking him to doctor's appointments?
I asked her to take him to go get his physical for football this year. I think that's really the only time I've asked her to take him to the doctor. Now, if he was sick or if she said he was sick and in her care, so you can take him, this is insurance information, you could take him or you can take him to urgent care or, whatever you wanted to do. But when he's with me, I take him to the doctor. And do you take him to the dentist? I have not taken him in a while. No, I have not taken him to the dentist, but I do. Have you provided him with school supplies? Yes. And so there was a testimony about this binder that he needed. Were you aware
that Ms. DeLong had provided him with a binder?
Yeah, I mean, I was told that she had bought the binder. I don't know if it was a necessity. I mean, it was something that he needed and could use. So she bought it. But I got him stuff too. You know, he got a backpack, school supplies, all the, you know, the other things that he needed was, you know, were provided by me as well.
Have you ever asked Ms. DeLong to provide Grayson with something because you couldn't afford it?
No,
And have you ever abandoned Grayson either with a girlfriend or with your grandparents?
no,
Have you ever required him to provide his himself with daily necessities like cooking his own meals?
no,
Do you have any history of domestic violence with Ms. Densmore?
no,
Do you believe that you have a bond with Grayson?
yes.
How do you show him love and affection?
He's getting older, so I can't really give him kisses anymore. He don't let me do that. But he will give me a hug. You know, I go and tell him good night. I love you. I tell him I love you in the morning. Have a good day. We joke, you know, we'll wrestle around. He's a boy, so we'll wrestle, we'll play football, we'll play basketball, we play video games. You know,
And
he talks mess and talks junk to me like any 13-year-old boy, 12-year-old boy does. So, you know, we rip each other sometimes, you know.
have you had any difficulties with this behavior on a scale that was similar to that January 30th incident?
Not to that scale. I mean, there was when he came back after this past incident where I lost my parenting time, he was a little bit rebellious then too. He was throwing, kicking, screaming, yelling to the point that he had to leave Miss Densmore's house because I wasn't home at that point in time. I was coming home the next day. I think I can't remember, but I can't remember exactly. But I know my mom went and picked him up because I was here doing something with work.
And since that incident, have there been further behavioral problems?
No, he's been pretty good.
Was there any problem with the transition after fall break?
No, he came home and got right back to business.
And do you believe that there's been any major change since 2019 that's had a serious impact on Grayson in a negative way?
No, I don't.
And do you think that this change of moving to Arkansas has had any kind of effect on him?
Actually, I think it's been more positive for him. He seems, like I said, this is the first time since I've had him where he seems comfortable at school.
I have no further questions.
Hey, sir, just to clarify, because we talked about Miss Densmore and then we talked about McKenzie, are they one and the same?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You went through, on the one exhibit, you went through the grades and you talked about that they didn't finish. You said he did not finish with any E's. What were his grades when the school year was completed?
I want to say I don't have it right here in front of me. I'm sorry, but I believe one was a C and the other was just passing. So I think it was a D plus, something like that. But he had increased them from the E's because we were working on getting them up. One was a C. I know one was a C for sure. I don't remember which class it was, and the other was just passing.
Okay, so of the two that were E's, one was a C, one was a D or something of that nature.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So just to clarify, when this incident happened, when you claimed that you were homeless, that's when you were residing with Miss Densmore, and then you said, I think there was one day, and then you went back to live with Miss Densmore, and you've been living with Miss Densmore ever since?
Yes, sir. I left to go just to get away. Went to my parents' house, went to my home that I grew up at, and then I went back home to where I reside at the next day. Yes. Okay.
Let me ask you, because we talked a little bit about conferences and the Meet the Teacher. From 2019 through the present, other than the Meet the Teacher, did you go to all of the conferences?
Yes, sir.
And did Miss DeLong ever go to any of the conferences that you're aware of?
No, she did not.
Since 2019, other than the current order, has the plaintiff at any point came to you and stated that there were issues or she had issues with your parenting?
No,
Okay, I don't think I have anything further. Ms. Smith, do you have any recross?
Yes, Your Honor, I just have a couple of questions. Mr. Cromwell, you stated that when Grayson gets home from school now, that you're either home or your brother or his wife, but you also stated that your work schedule during the week is from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., correct?
yes.
So how often during the week are you home when Grayson gets out of school?
There's usually at least 2 days a week that I'm home when he gets home from school, or I'll pick him up from school 2 days a week.
And during the incident that you testified to where Grayson had to leave Miss Densmore's home because he was acting out or having some behavioral issues, you testified that the relationship between Grayson and Miss Densmore was great. So my question is, why is it that he was in a position to where he had to leave the home if they have a fairly good relationship?
He was acting out. He had acted out that whole weekend. I had just got him back. He had acted out that whole weekend. And when he finally came to the point, he screamed at me that weekend because I was home. He screamed at me and said, I don't want to be here. Call my mom. T said, tell my mom to come pick me up. So it just felt like to us that he was told that if he didn't want to be around or if he wanted to do what he wanted to do, that he could call his mom and she could just come get him and it'd be okay. So instead of that, I said, no, we're going to call my mom and my grandmother and have him go over there and get him to calm down. He was just acting terrible that weekend, but ever since that weekend, he's been fine. They have been fine. He's been over there since. She's here right now. They've been just fine. He can, just like any other step-parent relationship would be.
You just stated that it seemed like he was told that he could call his mom if he didn't want to be there. What put you under that impression that he was told as opposed to him just having a desire to want to call his mom?
Because that was the only time and he's ever done that or said that.
Back to the 17 missing assignments, you just stated that in the text message, that was the first time you're aware that he was behind with so many assignments, but you also testified that you were in constant contact with the teachers and making sure that he got his assignments done. But it looks like the 17 missing assignments were once again towards the end of the school year. So how was that the first time you're aware if you had been in contact with the teachers?
Whenever we had found out about the assignments is when we took initiative to start, me and the teachers, to try to get whatever we need to do to get that corrected. I couldn't tell you what the date was for that. I just know that there were the assignments missing. We found out, we came to whatever we had to do to get that corrected as quickly as possible.
And one more question, as far as doctor's appointments, you said that you take Grayson to his doctor's appointments, but do you recall a time during the summer when Grayson was with Miss DeLong and she asked you about getting an insurance card to take Grayson to the doctor because he was showing symptoms of being sick or having a cold?
No, I mean, if she asked me to take him to the doctor, his insurance is at the doctor's office. They have it on file. So if she wanted to, all she had to do is take him to Serial City Pediatrics, where they have his insurance on file, because that's where his doctor is.
Do you recall having a conversation with Miss DeLong regarding Grayson not feeling well while he was with her?
Yes, and I said that she could take him to the doctor.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay. Ms. McNiff, anything else?
I have nothing further.
Okay, thank you, sir. Ms. McNiff, next witness.
Do we have a Travis Gleason by any chance?
What was the first name, Miss?
Travis?
Travis, okay. Okay, Mr. Gleason, are you able to hear us?
Yeah.
Ken?
Yes.
Okay. What I'm gonna do is, you've been a little faint, so when you talk and answer, please speak up, okay?
Okay.
Sir, we're gonna have you sworn in, so if you would raise your right hand and then we'll proceed.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Again, you're still faint, so act like you're shouting if you would, so we can hear you.
All right.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. McNiff.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Gleason, where do you work?
I work for Calhoun County Children's Protective Services.
And what is your position there?
I'm a CPS investigator with the state of Michigan.
And how long have you been in that role?
As an investigator, about a year, a little over a year. I've been with the department since December of 2018.
And do you have any familiarity with Mr. Ryan Cromwell?
I believe I had a past investigation with Mr. Cromwell.
And would that investigation have been either late January or early February of this year?
That sounds correct, yes.
And what did you do with regard to that investigation?
I closed it. My understanding was that there was not a preponderance of evidence to support the allegations that I was assigned to investigate in that case.
And who did you talk to in the process of investigating that complaint?
I spoke with Mr. Cromwell, spoke with Grayson, spoke with the doctor's office that had conducted the well child assessment for Grayson following being assigned.
And did you have any recommendations to Mr. Cromwell to change anything he's doing with regard to the discipline of Grayson?
We did suggest that you might want to look into some therapy, some counseling for Grayson. As far as discipline, we did ask that you don't use physical discipline. And we did try to notify him that if he does decide to use physical discipline, if there are marks or bruises left or that there are long-term injuries caused by that discipline, then that could be grounds for a CPS case opening. He was notified of that.
And to the best of your recollection, were there any bruises or marks on Grayson as the result of physical discipline with your investigation?
In my investigation, there was not. There was no abnormal findings from the well child appointment that Grayson had attended.
I have no further questions.
Okay, Ms. Smith, any cross?
No cross, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Gleason, thank you for your testimony. You're excused. Have a good day.
Okay, thank you.
I would next call McKenzie Densmore.
Okay, Ian. Ms. Densmore, we're going to take some testimony from you, so we'd ask that you raise your right hand and be sworn in.
Okay.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead, Ms. McNiff, when you're ready.
Thank you. Ms. Densmore, how long have you known Mr. Cromwell?
About 9 years.
And for how long have you been involved in a relationship?
I would say 6 of those years.
Was there a period when you were involved and then not involved and then you got back together?
Yes.
So for this reconciliation period, the second time you've been in a relationship, how long has that been?
Almost 2 years.
And since you have been back in this relationship with Mr. Cromwell, have you ever known him to be homeless?
No.
And have you ever kicked him out of the home you share together?
No, I did not.
And has Mr. Cromwell ever relied upon you financially to be his sole support for himself?
No.
And have you ever had to contribute financially to Grayson's support?
No.
And are you relocating to Arkansas?
Yes, I plan to.
And at your home in Battle Creek, do you have a basement?
I do, yes.
Okay. Did you ever require Grayson to sleep in the basement?
No, I did not.
And what do you use that basement for?
There is a laundry room down there. I keep a bunch of my holiday and storage decor down there. And then there's a playroom / game room for the boys, for an extra spot for their video games to go, and just kind of an extra area to go to in the house if they needed more space.
And can you describe what your relationship with Grayson is like?
I love Grayson and treat Grayson as if he was one of my own children. We get along pretty well. I feel like that he feels that we have an open line of communication. He'll talk to me. He's pretty open with me. We show each other affection. We have a playful relationship too. So he's definitely one of my little buddies.
And you have a child who's Grayson's age?
I do, yes.
And how do those children get along together?
They are best friends. Absolutely. Brothers, best friends, definitely. They're only about 4 months apart.
Did they ever fight?
Maybe banter here and there, like brothers, but nothing physical, nothing ever crazy, just maybe over a video game or something like that.
And were you home on January 30th of this year when there
Yeah.
was a dispute over Grayson choking Logan?
Yes, I was at home.
Okay. And is Logan your child?
Yes, he is.
And can you describe what you observed? And don't tell me what either of the children said, just what did you observe?
Ryan and I were in the kitchen, and the basement is right off the kitchen where you just go down the stairs right there. And I believe we were making dinner, doing the dishes. And I hear just Logan crying coming up the stairs. And then that's all that I had witnessed was that, and took Logan to the back or towards the house where the bathroom is and where the lights were brighter, so I could just make sure he was okay and kind of, understand what happened.
Could you hear what was going on between Grayson and Ryan at that point?
I could not. No, I was at my point, my focus was Logan, just because he's only 5, and did he really choke you? What did happen? Rather, was he being dramatic? Did this just really take place or not? So I was not present for that.
And were you aware of Grayson leaving the home?
I was not.
Okay. So it transpired, you didn't observe. Is that accurate?
No. Yeah, that's accurate. Yes.
Has there been a time recently when Grayson was acting out and you were struggling with his behavior?
Yes.
And when was that?
I do not recall the date of that. I do recall what happened, but I do not recall the date. I'm sorry.
And do you recall whether or not Grayson had been recently returned from his mother's? Or
yes, I believe he had just returned from his week that he had with her, because he would do 1 week with her and 1 week with us. It was still in the summertime.
Okay. And what happened?
Grayson was upset because Logan had taken the charging cord to his Xbox controller and just kind of blew up about it. It was very out of character. He threw his microphone for his Xbox. He broke it in half. He kicked his shoes at me across the living room. He's never been aggressive towards me. He slammed a door on me. So then I had called Ryan's mother and grandmother and asked that they, come and help me. I wasn't really quite sure what to do. I've never seen him that way. I didn't want him to harm himself or harm me. So they came over and tried to de-escalate the situation. And then he ended up going with them for the rest of the night.
And is there a reason that you didn't call Ms. DeLong?
We don't have the best relationship, unfortunately. Otherwise, I would have. We do have each other's phone numbers. In my opinion, I got a better response out of Ryan's grandmother and mother than I would have if I would have contacted Ms. DeLong.
Other than those 2 incidents, have you ever had a situation where you felt like you weren't able to maintain control over Grayson's behavior? No.
He's usually very calm, sweet, just a very loving, funny little boy, very, very sweet. That outburst and that anger was very out of the ordinary.
And do you get involved at all in any of his educational activities, like helping him with homework, checking assignments, things like that?
Yes. When we were getting the progress reports after we found out about the 17 missing assignments, I was able to also call the school and communicate with the teacher. And we made sure, Ryan and I together made sure that he got the tutoring and the lunch tutoring. And we would get weekly progress reports, which came in a folder with his name on it. So everything was kept together. So I would help him with that and keep things in line and make sure he understood what he was doing, and that 17 missing assignments weren't acceptable, and kind of gave him a real life explanation as to why also.
So what have you observed about Ryan's discipline of Grayson and the other children in the household?
Ryan doesn't very hardly raise his voice. Ryan's a very gentle person. Just, he would just have to like, I'm going to take this away, or it's time to go to bed. It's time to turn this off. It's kind of like, it's time. And then if after a couple of times, Ryan may have to get a little stern, but I think that he parents gently. He is a dad, so kids get a little bit more sensitive when dad has to maybe raise his voice a little. I know my 5-year-old does, but I would just say, he gently parents, and then very occasionally does he have to raise his voice because they understand his tone.
So has Ryan shared with you any of the exhibits that were submitted by Ms. DeLong?
No, he is not.
If I were to tell you there was an exhibit where Ryan threatened to whoop Grayson's ass, would that surprise you?
I don't know if I would take it out of joking context or not, just because we with our boys, we have a playful relationship to them too. So I could be walking through and I'll trip over Grayson's tennis shoe or my son's tennis shoe, like, boy, I'm going to beat you. But we're all, everybody laughs about it. So I'm not sure if I would take it as a threat or if it was being funny. It would just kind of depend on the situation.
Has there ever been a time when you've observed Ryan interacting with any of the children where you were concerned that he would become physically abusive?
Absolutely not.
Is there any domestic violence in your relationship?
Absolutely not, ever.
And how stable do you believe your relationship is?
I believe our relationship is very strong and stable. We're, in the process of relocating quite a ways from home. So we feel stable enough and together enough to do that with our family and kind of just working towards that.
Do you have any concerns about Ryan's ability to financially provide basic necessities for the family?
No, we've never had that concern.
Has he always been able to provide food?
Always, yes.
Clothing?
Yes.
Shelter?
Yes.
Medical care?
Yes.
I have no further questions.
Okay.
Okay.
Ms. Smith, any cross-examination?
Yes. Ms. Densmore, you stated that you have never kicked Mr. Cromwell out of the house, but has there ever been a time when he has voluntarily left the house that the two of you share, or left the relationship due to an argument between the two of you?
Yes, there was one occasion where we got into a pretty serious argument and he did leave the house.
And how long did he leave for?
Not even a full 24 hours.
Where was Grayson during this time?
Grayson was, I'm unsure. I do not recall. I believe.
You also stated that you and Ms. DeLong do not have the best relationship. Can you kind of elaborate as to why you feel the two of you don't have the best relationship? She
has not cared for me since Ryan and I got into a relationship the first time we dated. I was the woman that he dated after her. Other than that, I don't believe that there's any reason for her to have an issue with me and vice versa.
Do you believe that although maybe the two of you may not care for each other personally, it would still be in the best interest of Grayson to contact her with issues about Grayson, seeing as how she is his mother?
Absolutely, yes.
And so why during the incident where Grayson was acting out, and I believe you said kicked or threw a shoe at you, why did you not contact Ms. DeLong if you believe that it would have been in the best interest to have that kind of relationship with her, being his mother, as opposed to calling Mr. Cromwell's mother and grandmother?
Miss DeLong and I had the relationship that I do with Ryan's mother and grandmother, she would have been my first call. But due to the relationship that her and I do not have, unfortunately, I felt that the issue would be resolved more efficiently for Grayson's sake, especially if I just contacted his grandparents and great grandmother so that they could help me work to get that issue.
So you were basing your decision making. Were you basing your decision making off of your personal feelings in relationship with Miss DeLong versus what would have been best for Grayson?
No, I was basing it off of what would be more efficient at that time.
Ms. Densmore, do you believe it is ever appropriate to joke about physical violence with young impressionable children?
No.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Ms. McNiff, anything else?
Nothing further.
Okay. Densmore, that concludes your testimony. Thank you. You're excused. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too.
Now we will move into the closing argument. So Ms. Smith, you can proceed with your closing argument.
Today we have proved a clear change of circumstances to warrant a change of custody of the minor Grayson Cromwell. Testimony has shown that the love and affection from both parties for the child is strong, but that the child feels comfortable going to mom with his problems. When the child is in mom's care, they spend all of their free time together. And while having the support and help and aid of a village-like family community is very helpful and a blessing to have, nothing can truly supplement mom. There's been testimony that mom has spent an entire weekend helping the child catch up on his schoolwork. That mom has a job that not only allows her to provide to care for herself and her children, but also gives her enough flexibility to be there whenever the child needs. We've heard that mom has been attending and been a member of a church organization, which she does attend with her youngest son and Grayson whenever he is in her care, which can and will help Grayson and aid him and allow him to have a set moral compass as he grows into a young adult and continues to go through his teenagehood. The Bible does say to train up a child in the way that they should go, and when they get old, they won't depart from it. And in today's society and in the world that we're living in, there isn't enough moral stability that you can place in your child. Mom has also made major improvements in her personal life, as testified by her mother, Miss Tina DeLong. She's gotten baptized. She has not been in a relationship since the 2019 order. Not to say that relationships are bad or negative, but the defendant has testified to having 2 relationships since the 2019 order, both in which he made the decision to move himself and the minor child into the homes of their respective females. Again, not putting a negative stigma on relationships, but mom has made a conscious decision to be available to dedicate all of her time to her children. And sometimes when relationships don't work out, that does provide a certain level of instability for any minor children that is involved. Mom is also the sole provider in her home, where she's been living for the last 2 years, alone with her youngest child. The defendant did testify that he has had 4 moves since the 2019 order, all except for one of which he's lived with other people. Ms. DeLong has testified that Grayson has a close relationship with his siblings, including 2 of which that mom is able to actively cultivate and help those relationships grow. We've heard testimony from the defendant that he does not have custody of his 5 other minor children, 3 of which he has not seen in 12 or more years. There was testimony that the child had bouts of anger and outbursts while in the care and custody of the defendant that has led the defendant to swat the child in the mouth, and testimony of threats of physical punishment. The child also fell behind in school in the defendant's care, and there was mixed testimony as to how and when it happened, but the truth of the matter is an active and involved parent would not have allowed it to happen at all. While no person or parent is perfect and there's no manual to parenting, I do believe that we have presented enough evidence to show the court that there is circumstances for a change in modification of custody in favor of the plaintiff, Ms. Danielle DeLong. Nothing further.
Thank you. Ms. McNiff, closing argument.
Your Honor, our position is that Dad has maintained and has the established custodial environment over Grayson. As the court well knows, the court has to look at who Grayson primarily looks to for guidance, discipline, necessities of life, and parental comfort. That's appropriate for his age and his needs. Dad's had sole legal and physical custody of Grayson since June of 2019, and he has provided all of those necessities of life, and including discipline and comfort to Grayson since that time. Certainly has improved, and there's no dispute that she's come a long way since 2019. However, What the court is required to look at is whether or not there's been a material change in circumstances that is somehow related to one of the 12 best interest factors, and that change has been significant enough to affect Grayson's well-being. And plaintiff simply hasn't met her burden of proof whatsoever. She's attempted to use text messages between defendant and a former girlfriend and between defendant and the child in order to prop up her allegations that there's been a material change. But the fact is, there simply hasn't been anything that's created a threat to Grayson's well-being. It's clear that both of these parents love Grayson. Grayson loves both parents. There's a bond between Grayson and his mom. There's a bond between Grayson and his dad. This has not changed whatsoever since 2019. Perhaps the bond between Grayson and mom has improved now that she's stabilized her life, but it's not a significant enough change to meet that Varga threshold. Both of these parties have the ability to provide for the raising and continuing of the child in a religion or creed. There's been no testimony that the parties in any way dispute Grayson's religious education. Both of these parties have been able to provide guidance to Grayson, and both parties have testified about the ways in which they've been able to provide guidance to Grayson. Again, this hasn't been a material change, and there's been nothing that's changed that's impacted Grayson in a negative way in terms of his well-being with regard to that factor. Both of these parties have testified that they have the ability to provide Grayson with food, with clothing, with medical care, and with all of his basic needs. Dad provides insurance. Dad has given mom permission to take Grayson to the doctor during her parenting time. Dad has asked mom to take Grayson to a physical when it was her parenting time, and the appointment occurred during her parenting time, and she was willing to do that. There's been absolutely no indication and no testimony that Grayson has in any way not received appropriate medical care, not received food, not received appropriate clothing, or that he lacks for anything. There's no change, again, since 2019 that has had an effect on his well-being with regard to this factor. The next factor is the length of the time the child has lived in a stable, satisfactory environment and the desirability of maintaining continuity. Mom lived in Coldwater until, I believe she said, May of 2020. Dad has always resided in the Battle Creek area. While dad has moved to different residences, he has stayed in Battle Creek in the locale. So he has maintained the child's relationships with extended family, with mom, with siblings. This recent move to Little Rock, Arkansas was approved by the court. There was a hearing that established that it was an appropriate move to have. Dad has established himself in a new job. He has a new house to move into on November 1st. This will be a stable and satisfactory environment. Again, other than the move to Arkansas, there's really been no change in the stability of this child's environment since 2019. Now that the child has settled into Little Rock and is enrolled and started in school, it would be a change to take him out of that environment. And that change would not be in his best interest now that he started to make friends. He likes his teachers. He likes where he lives. He's with his cousins. With regard to the permanence of a family unit, both parties right now have stable family units. Mom's residing with her other child. Mom isn't seeing anyone else. Dad has had a stable relationship for the past 2 years. There's been no indication that dad's prior relationship had any kind of a major impact on Grayson. There's no testimony that Grayson had issues with dad leaving one girlfriend and having another girlfriend. So from the perspective of whether or not it's affected Grayson, again, there's been nothing to indicate that it has. It simply doesn't rise to the level contemplated by Varga versus Grassmeyer to have a significant effect on the child's well-being. Currently, Grayson has a good relationship with his dad's girlfriend. He has a good relationship with the children in the household. He has a good relationship with his younger brother in mom's household. There simply is not a material change in circumstances that relates to this particular factor. There's been very little testimony about the moral fitness of the parties involved. There's no indication that either party has been into any criminal activity since 2019. There's been no indication that either party has had substance abuse issues since 2019. There's no change related to this factor. Again, there was very little testimony about the mental and physical health of the parties involved, and that factor also does not indicate that there's been any kind of material change since 2019 that would affect Grayson. Grayson's homeschool and community record: he has played football in Battle Creek. He's trying out for basketball in Little Rock, Arkansas. Yes, he had missing assignments this past year, and he struggled a bit with school, not unlike so many children who experienced the shutdown of their schools in March of 2020, and virtual schooling and all the difficulties with socialization and with education that came with the pandemic. However, the fact is, Dad intervened. He found out Grayson was missing the 17 assignments. He worked with the school. He worked with grandma and great grandma to tutor him. Grayson had to stay in from recesses and lunches in order to catch up. And in the end, he passed his classes. So it was an obstacle that had to be overcome. And with the school and mom and grandma and grandpa and dad all pitching in, Grayson was able to be successful. Again, this is a normal sort of issue that comes up when we're dealing with 6th and 7th graders. It's not out of the ordinary, and it's not significant enough to have an effect on Grayson's well-being. The court has talked to Grayson and knows if he has a. With regard to the ability and willingness of the parties to facilitate a close and continuing relationship between the child and the other parent, this is where there has been a change since 2019, Your Honor. In this summer, plaintiff did withhold the child from the defendant, and she was held in contempt of this court as a result of withholding Grayson from his father. That could have a material effect. It could be a material change that would affected Grayson's well-being. In fact, Dad indicated that when Grayson came back after that period of time, he had an attitude problem, that was when he had the run-in with his stepmom and was throwing shoes and acting out. So I would suggest to this court that mom withholding Grayson for that period of time was a change, and it was not a change that was beneficial in any way to Grayson. On the other hand, Dad, when he found out that Grayson would have a week off for a fall break in Little Rock, even though he didn't have to, reached out to mom and indicated to mom that Grayson had this time off from school and that she could exercise additional parenting time that wasn't ordered to her if she would help out with transportation. That shows a willingness to continue to foster and encourage a strong relationship between mom and Grayson. Similarly, in January, when Grayson acted up and ran out of the house barefoot, when he was, assaulting his younger brother, again, things that children do, Dad did the right thing. He reached out to mom and said, "Hey, I'm having problems with our child." And yeah, he'd used some language that maybe wasn't the best, but I would also suggest to the court that anyone who's ever parented a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old at some time has said, "I'm going to beat that kid if they do X," or "I'm going to kill that kid if they do this again." Perhaps we should all consider our language a little bit more carefully, but reaching out to the other parent and saying, "I'm grounding this kid for the rest of his life," is not abnormal. It's not domestic violence. CPS did not see it as abuse and did not substantiate that report. CPS indicated that maybe the child needed some counseling given the fact that he was assaulting his younger brother, which isn't necessarily unusual either. However, I would suggest to the court that, again, this was a one-off incident. This hasn't happened a lot, and it was handled appropriately by Dad. The court can consider any other factor that's particularly relevant to a child custody dispute. I would suggest to the court that this motion to change custody was not filed until after Dad asked this court for permission to move to Little Rock, Arkansas. If mom was concerned that Dad was abusive in January of this year, it would seem that she would have filed the motion to change custody or to change parenting time at that point. that she wouldn't wait until after dad sought to move to Arkansas to bring up that issue, to bring up all of the other issues that she brought up. They all occurred before dad filed his motion to move to Arkansas. And then subsequently, mom decided that she didn't want the child to move to Arkansas. And so she inflated incidents that she wasn't particularly concerned about previously in order to try to make a case to modify custody. We would ask the court to find that mom has not met her burden and that custody, her request to change custody should be denied.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Smith, anything else?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Well, in this particular case, and I'll get into all of the things the court has to consider and address, but I want to address credibility, and credibility is always a consideration in every case. Oftentimes, parties will allege that the other party or their witnesses were untruthful or lying or something of that nature. And in this particular case, the court can't say that I found any really substantial inconsistencies in the testimony. There was some conflicting issues, and that's not unusual in cases like this. And the court considers, again, any issues of credibility as, again, where the court will take into consideration the testimony of all of the witnesses in an attempt to discern which testimony is the most credible. As I said, we didn't have a substantial amount of inconsistent testimony, so this isn't like a typical case where we have people at a diametrically opposed positions, but this is not unusual in these cases. And I say unusual because what happens oftentimes is parties will come in on a petition to change custody, and they will look at and highlight oftentimes very innocuous situations, which they now want to use to bludgeon the other party, which, again, previously, when the parties were together, oftentimes there were not any substantial consideration given to those issues, or when they're separated, the parties took no action on that. And so the court is taking that into consideration as well. As the attorneys know, these cases are governed by the best interest of the child test as delineated under the Child Custody Act at MCL 722.23, and we'll examine each of those factors in a moment. The first task, however, for the court is to determine whether an established custodial environment exists. An established custodial environment exists if over an appreciable time, the child naturally looks to the custodian in that environment for guidance, discipline, necessities of life, and parental comfort. The statute provides that the court can look at the age of the child, the physical environment, the inclination of the custodian, the child as to the permanency of the relationship. The mere fact that the child resides in one particular home and is insufficient in and of itself to establish a custodial relationship. If an established custodial relationship exists, the court cannot change that established custodial environment without making a determination that is supported by clear and convincing evidence. The legislators enacted the clear and convincing evidence burden of proof to minimize the prospect of unwarranted or disruptive change of custody and to erect a barrier against the removal of the child from an established custodial environment, except in the most compelling cases. Clear and convincing evidence is evidence which would produce in the mind of the trier of fact a firm belief or conviction as to the truth of the allegations sought to be established, evidence so clear, direct, and weighty and convincing as to enable the fact finder to come to a clear conviction without hesitancy of the truth of precise facts at issue. And we will go through many of those particular facts. In this particular case, as the court looks at the factors to consider whether an established custodial environment exists, meaning who does the child naturally look to in that environment for guidance, discipline, necessity of life, and parental comfort. It's not to minimize the contributions of either of the parent, but it's to look at who does the child naturally look to. Court will note in this matter that, again, back on June 11th, 2019, after a full hearing, the court did in fact change custody to defendant father. He's maintained custody since that particular time, or for a total of approximately 4 years, where Grayson has been solely in his particular care. As we look at that, there's been testimony about both of the parties helping and providing guidance to Grayson, both of them providing discipline, both of them providing necessity of life and parental comfort. But the fact is that the child has been solely in the defendant's care and custody since that time. And during that particular time, he's the one that's, for the great majority of the time, provided those particular factors, if you would, to Grayson: guidance, discipline, necessity of life, and parental comfort. And he's done so at a time, if you want to say a time that, again, there are changes in the child, and I'll address some of that later as we go over the various factors. But it does appear to this court, after hearing all of the testimony, that the established custodial environment does exist in the home of the defendant father. I would note the court is going to go through the best interest of the child factors at this point. Court will note that in this matter, court is permitted to weigh each of the factors appropriately for the circumstances of this particular case. And in the case of Dempsey v. Dempsey, the court stated a child custody determination is much more difficult and subtle than an arithmetic form computation of factors. It is one of the most demanding undertakings of a trial judge, one in which he must not only listen to what is said to him and observe all that happens before him, but the task of requiring him to discern and feel the climate and chemistry of the relationships between the child and the parents. This is an inquiry which the court hopes to hear not only the words, but the music of the various relationships. As I go through the factors, the court will, in fact, consider that. And again, not only just what's been said in the testimony, but the implications and how those relate to the relationship between the parties and Grayson. The first factor the court has to look at is the love, affection, other emotional ties existing between the parties involved and the child. In this particular case, the parties have both testified about the loving, affectionate relationship that they have. The court would note that the defendant has testified that obviously at Grayson's age of 12, he says, I can't kiss him anymore, but I tell him I love him. And again, we have a good relationship. We have a very playful relationship, that we engage in many activities together. And again, the court would note that that is not unusual for a child coming in an age where he's going through puberty, he's getting older. And I mean, the last thing you want is your dad giving you a hug and kiss, et cetera, especially not in public. So that just happens. So what happens, the court does believe that this factor does weigh evenly as to both parties. They both exhibit that love, affection, and emotional ties, as does Grayson towards them. Next factor is the capacity and disposition of the parties involved to give the child love, affection, guidance, and continuation in their education, raising the child in a particular religion or creed. The court would note that the testimony of the plaintiff is that she's now going to the Kingdom Builders Church, that she has done that for now just over a year. And again, that is pretty recent. That was confirmed by her mother as well when she testified in this matter. The court does note that the different considerations as to the capacity and disposition. The capacity is whether they can do it, which they've demonstrated that, as I showed in factor A, and the disposition. It does appear that both of the parties have, again, extended love, affection, guidance to Grayson in a particular way. They've each been involved in his education during the time when he apparently was not turning in assignments, although Mr. Cromwell had testified the assignments had been done and they were on the computer. He simply hadn't turned those in, many of those. But notwithstanding, when in fact the parties found out about that, the plaintiff did start working with him on her time when she had Grayson with him, that the defendant began working with him. He enlisted the help of his mother and grandmother. He states his mother was a parapro. His grandmother had been a teacher, and they, in fact, were involved in helping Grayson get up to speed. He also went to school to, again, find a way that he could help assist him at that particular time, that in fact, he was able to get his grades up, that in fact, later in this 2023 school year, at the end of the school year, in May, I think it was, he had 2 E's, and that at the end of the school year, that those have been increased to a C and a D through that assistance. Hopefully that wouldn't occur in the future, and I think that it wouldn't at this point, but again, court would note that he had testified that with regard to over the years, that he was the one that was responsible for going to the conferences, that the plaintiff didn't go to the conferences, notwithstanding the fact that she was here locally, that in fact, he was the one that went to the school. He had the communication with the school teachers, the principal, and that came up in an instance too where the bullying was, is that the plaintiff expressed consideration about the bullying, but she never went to school. And when she was asked, she said she was not sure how the bullying was resolved. In contrast, it was the defendant that did talk to the teachers when it didn't get resolved. He went to the principals, and subsequently it was resolved in this particular matter, as was the issue of the grades. And it's unfortunate that he came into a situation like that, but it was the defendant that resolved those. So the court will find that this factor does slightly favor the defendant father. Next factor is the capacity and disposition of the parties involved to provide the child with food, clothing, medical care, and other remedial care recognized under the law in place of medical care and other material needs. There's no dispute by either party that the other party has provided for the child when they've been in their respective care. That in fact, the testimony was that the defendant had provided medical care through the doctor for Grayson, but also that he had asked, on the one occasion, he'd asked the plaintiff to do it when appointment physical was scheduled during her time. She did that. Doesn't appear to be a reluctance on anybody's part. So obviously they have the disposition to do so, and they have provided the material needs to the child as well when the child's in their particular care. And there's no dispute about that. The court will find that this factor weighs equally as to both parties. Next factor is the length of time the child has lived in a stable, satisfactory environment and the desirability of maintaining continuity. In this matter, obviously, Grayson has been with the defendant since 2019. That talking about the stable, satisfactory environment, the court does note that at the time that this originally occurred, that the mother was in Coldwater, and then she moved to Battle Creek, as she states, to be closer to Grayson, and that's admirable. And the testimony of the defendant has been that he did have some moves, that he had previously resided with Shelley, that they had a breakup, that he then had a relationship with Miss McKenzie, that there was one time when they had an argument, he went and stayed on an overnight basis with his grandmother, and then he returned the next day, and Miss McKenzie and he continued a relationship at that point, and then there was a separation. But notwithstanding that, it does appear, based upon what the testimony of Miss Densmore in this particular case, is that they've had a stable relationship since that time, that she had testified she'd known the defendant approximately, I think it was 9 years, that I want to get that correct so I don't misstate it. Yes, that they've known each other for 9 years. They had a relationship for approximately 6 years. And again, the second time was this 2-year period of time. And so they did have some time where they had not been together, but apparently that has rectified itself, et cetera. it does appear that in this particular matter that the stable environment in this particular matter could exist in the home of both of the parties. So the court's not giving any different weight to that particular factor in favor of either party. Next factor is the primacy of the family unit, the existing or proposed custodial home or homes. In this matter, the plaintiff has testified she hasn't been in any relationships since back in 2019, that in fact she has no significant other in her life, and that so that is not a particular issue. The defendant had testified, again, this relationship with Shelley, and that in fact it is that lasted for a couple years, I guess, and then since that time, in fact, actually they were together, residing in the same apartment for probably about a year, but he said the last 6 months of that he was with Miss McKenzie, he was spent 6 years with Miss McKenzie, then he went back with Miss Densmore. And again, it does appear that that relationship has solidified such that Miss Densmore is moving to Little Rock with him. And that, again, it doesn't seem that that has resolved itself in this particular case. Court cannot find that this factor favors either party based upon the totality of the testimony. Next factor is the moral fitness of the parties involved. There's been no testimony about either party being not morally fit, so the court will not consider that factor. The next factor is the mental and physical health of the parties. Again, there's been no testimony about any mental or physical health or any problems, and so the court will not take that into consideration either. The next factor is the home, school, and community record of the child. In this case, the child had, again, when he was with the plaintiff, had been in Coldwater, moved after changing custody, went to the defendant, and defendant had him in 2 different schools, I believe, Lakeview and then another school. And again, but the court will note that that was when he was younger, that again, most recently was the time when he was in Lakeview, now before changing schools, when he moved to again to Little Rock. The court note that the defendant testified about the family ties and relationships that he has in Little Rock with brother, with cousins, with aunt, etc., and that he has a job there. Court would note that he had lost his job at Art Vans after a period of years, substantial period of years, when Art Vans went out of business. Obviously, that's not attributable to anything that the defendant did. He worked for a couple of years, I think he said, with a car dealer, and that didn't work either. And I think it was with Value Furniture as well, briefly, and then the car dealer. And now he's now back working at a furniture store, which apparently appears to be his niche, if you would, or where he works. Court will note that he has testified that, again, the home situation in Little Rock is good. It's a 3-bedroom home that Grayson will have his own room there. He does until such time as, again, Miss Densmore comes down, and then will probably be in with her son, which is approximately the same age. That he has testified that, in fact, the Grayson likes his new school, that he has friends at the new school, that he is trying out for basketball, that he intends to go out for football next season, because the school doesn't have a football program, but there's an independent one. And Mr. Cromwell's brother is a coach for that program as well. And so it does appear that some of the issues that existed in the Battle Creek schools with the bullying and some of those issues have obviously resolved themselves, as Grayson does appear to enjoy the school and the activities that he's involved in Little Rock. The court will find that this factor does slightly favor the defendant father. Next factor is the reasonable preference of the child. If the court considers the child be of sufficient age to express a preference, I did have a good conversation with Grayson. They'll find him sufficient age to express a preference, and the court's taking that into consideration. Next factor is the willingness and ability of each of the parties to facilitate and encourage a close and continued parent-child relationship between the child and the other parent. In this particular matter, Ms. McNiff does point out that the court had found the plaintiff just this last summer in contempt of court for not returning Grayson to the defendant. The court is giving that consideration. The court will note that the defendant had testified that when he became aware of the fall break from school, he wasn't aware until the last minute. He thought they were just out for a period of time. That when he became aware of that, he immediately contacted the plaintiff and attempted to discuss matters with her to get Grayson to her at a time that was not her scheduled time. I am again impressed with that in consideration of the fact that the plaintiff was found this summer to be in contempt of court for withholding Grayson from the defendant, and that notwithstanding that, he would turn around and extend that courtesy to her. I'm taking that into consideration in this matter. When I do and look at this particular factor, the court does find that this factor favors defendant father. Next factor is domestic violence. There's been no testimony about domestic violence other than the defendant has testified there's no domestic violence in his home. Ms. Densmore testified there's no domestic violence, and she testified as well that the defendant is not physically abusive in any way to her, the children, etc. The court is taking all of that into consideration in this matter. And there's been no testimony about any in the plaintiff's home. So the court is not giving any consideration to that. Court would only note that as Ms. Tina DeLong testified, that since the 2019 order, that the plaintiff has made substantial changes. She's overcome many things. She states that she was previously in a bad relationship. I don't know if that's reflective of any domestic violence. I'm not going to assume that. I'm just saying she said that. But she said she's made good progress, that she's grown a lot. She's more of a mother at this particular point. So I'm taking that into consideration when we look at other factors, but I'm not giving any weight to the domestic violence factor. As to other factors, as I stated, Tina DeLong had testified about the improvements that her daughter's made. That's great. And it's admirable that she's made those particular changes. So the court is taking that into consideration. Court will note that the plaintiff has brought up a couple instances that our court wants to independently address, and that is the incident concerning the January 2023 incident in which Grayson had been acting out substantially, and the defendant contacted the plaintiff to see if she would take him. Court notes in looking over those texts that clearly there is incident and reflective of the frustration that the defendant experienced on that particular date, that he did what a reasonable parent would do. He enlisted the other parent to attempt to eliminate the problem, and notwithstanding how, I guess you'd say, inappropriate maybe the language was about what he would do to Grayson in this matter, he didn't do it. And in fact, Child Protective Services investigated the case thoroughly, and in fact found that there was no substantiation, and found that there was no, not even as the CPS worker stated, not even a preponderance in this particular matter, and they also took no action in this particular case. Note that Grayson was returned to the defendant the next day, and that there were no instances that occurred after this until this summer when Grayson was returned to the defendant. And at that time, there was this blow up in this time with Miss Densmore, and that she said that was basically totally out of character for Grayson, that she had stated in this matter that she had always had a good relationship with Grayson, that she'd always treated him like one of her own children, that Grayson was always very open with her, that they were playful, they showed signs of affection. Grayson and her son were best friends, and that in fact his responding this way was totally unusual. As she said, when he returned home, Logan had apparently taken his charging cord, he blew up, he broke his microphone, he kicked her through his shoe at her, he slammed the doors. And as she stated, he never liked this. She then enlisted the grandmother, and the grandmother came and again calmed down Grayson, took him for a brief time, then Grayson was returned to the home, and everything has been good since that time. Miss Densmore testified that Grayson had a very strong relationship with the defendant, that the defendant always financially supported the family, and that he had always done so, and that he had been a primary provider for Miss Densmore too when she was in the home and providing for the home. So the court doesn't look at the allegations that in some way Shelley or Miss Densmore have been the one to support the defendant because he had resided in their home. He testified that we went into Miss Densmore's home because it was a larger home, had a bigger yard, etc. And that makes rational sense in this particular case. And so I'm not going to ascribe any superior motive or inference in this matter as a result of that. When the court considers this, and again, the court has to consider all of the factors, which I hopefully have done. And as I said, the court can't go through every piece of evidence that's been discussed in this hearing, because if we did, again, we would be here again for as much time as it took to go through all of that testimony, that the court simply looks at that as a totality of the circumstances, as a total, if you would, of everything that's happened. And when I do that, I have to look at has the testimony that's been presented, does it reach the level of clear and convincing evidence? Meaning evidence that allows the fact finder to come to a clear conviction without hesitancy of the truth of the precise facts and issues. In this particular matter, the court will find that the evidence does not approach even clear and convincing evidence sufficient to change custody. As a result, the court will deny the petition for change of custody and leave the custody with defendant father. With that, I'll ask Ms. Smith, is there anything that you believe the court needs to address or that I have not addressed before we conclude?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. McNiff, is there anything you believe that I need to address before we conclude?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you, Ms. McNiff. I'll ask that you would prepare an order denying the motion in this particular matter.
I will do so. Thank
You
you.
can submit that under 7 days. Thank you all, and I know that Ms. DeLong, you're probably not pleased with this decision, but I think when you see the constraints that the court has as it relates to the factors and what the court has to look at, that you'll see why the court came to the conclusion that we did. And so I wish you the best. Hope everything works out. And the court will end this matter at, I can't see the clock that far. 2:19 p.m. You're free to go. Have a good afternoon.